check who did that.
You'll never know.
Is it me? I would do that.
All right, very good. We'll
Is that feedback?
we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the Cotw County Council Committee of the Whole meeting for Wednesday, July 24th, 2013. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Calling the roll, Mr. Miller. Here. Mr. Brady.
Here.
Mr. Germana.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Rogers.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Mr. Greenspan.
Here.
And Ms. Conley. There is a quorum.
We can amend. Great, thank you. Is there any public comment related to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, there is not.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Before we begin, I just want to, just a few comments. The purpose of this meeting today is to review the council-sponsored proposed charter amendments. 6 of these items are very similar in subject to the items referred to from the Charter Review Commission, but as we recall, the items referred to us from the Charter Review Commission today in those hearings could not be amended. We had to vote them up or down or refer them to committee or to be placed on the ballot or not. These actually, we can have open debate and discussion, and we can actually make amendments if we so choose. Unlike in the previous Committee of the Whole, we are not compelled to recommend any of these to move forward. If an item does not receive 6 votes in this committee, the item will die in committee. So a little different than protocol and the rules we had the other day, but I wanted to just make sure everybody was aware of where we stood. The one item on the agenda that I want to bring everyone's attention to, and we're going to move that item. Madam Clerk, which item is that we're moving to the end of the agenda?
Resolution number 2013-0160, which is C, item C.
That item has been requested to be moved to the end of the agenda per the law director, and we will comply with that request. Before we begin today, though, there is a discussion regarding a potential contract with the county that was presented Monday in the Board of Control, and it was recommended by the Council President and those members of the Board of Control, Council's representatives, that it be presented here today for discussion. It involves the potential new move and relocation of the county administration building. So we asked Ms. Teeuwen if she could present today, and she will do just that. Please state your name and position for the record.
Thank you, Bonnie Teeuwen, Director of Public Works. Thank you very much for accommodating me and bringing me to this committee and allowing me a few minutes to discuss this contract. Can you see me now that I moved it down? This is an amendment to CBRE's contract. As you are aware, CBRE was working as our broker for our disposition as well as our acquisition of property for our consolidation. They assist us with the acquisition of the headquarters. As we've discussed, with the potential construction of the hotel on our administration site, there's an advantage to us moving out of the administration building and making that site available to start construction sooner rather than later. It was determined that we would do an interim move. And this contract is to have CBRE assist us in finding some leased space that we need. Now, we've been working with URS to take the individuals that are in the administration building and try and find space in buildings that we either currently own or have a current lease with now. They've been pretty successful in finding places for the different departments. However, there's a balance of about 25,000 square feet that we cannot find space for. We're proposing to put part of the fiscal department in this 25,000 square feet. Mr. Steen is very adamant about making sure that his people stay together as best as possible. The way we have it proposed right now is a portion of his people will be in the Whitlatch building, which is a building that we own, that we've been trying to sell, that we've been unsuccessful with. The other half of his department would be in this balance of space that we would search for lease space for. So what we're asking CBRE to go out and negotiate with property owners that we know that have lease space available. Our goal is to find space that is mostly furnished or built out to some extent so that our adjustments to the tenant improvements are minimal. So this contract is for a maximum of $33,500. It would be billed at an hourly rate. We don't believe that it will be close to this. Ryan has set up the fee so that if he needs to do numerous presentations, there's hours in here. But we believe that depending on the space, the negotiations can be relatively easy, relatively inexpensive. And I'd ask for your approval. Oh, I'm sorry, this is not an approval.
Not approval today.
We would move this to Board of Controls on Monday.
Correct. Any questions? Yes, Ms. Cotw.
Through the chair to Ms. Tewin, for the Witchlot building, the part of the fiscal department that would go there, since it is on the selling block, if a potential owner came to buy that, in the process before a new building is built, that would be double cost to the county, wouldn't it, if that department had to move again?
As you know, we just recently re-advertised for the Whitlatch building and the Clemens Center, the Metro Health Center, to see if there was anybody interested that was not interested the first time. We were unsuccessful in getting a reasonable bid for the Whitlatch building, so we don't see any potential person at this time that would be interested in the Whitlatch building. So, we're looking from being in that space from October, September till July of 2014. So we're less than a year. So we don't believe that there would be anybody that would be interested that would want to move into that building that quickly.
Will we remove that off the selling list?
For now it is, yes.
And I'm just worried about the services that are basically for the residents. Where are those? Are those being looked in close proximity to where we are now?
So the services that are currently on the first floor of the administration building, we're proposing that those services, those are like the teller type services, that those services be in this balance of the lease space. So that's why it's important that CBRE is knowledgeable with the current space. Now, we currently have space in Reserve Square that we lease. There's other space that's adjacent to lease space that we would look at potentially amending that lease at Reserve Square to accommodate that. So again, those services would be downtown. We would make sure that they would be accessible to the general public. The services, the Board of Revisions, let's see, Real Properties, Consumer Affairs, Board of Revisions, those offices would be at the Whitlatch building. And actually, the Whitlatch building is a good fit for them because there used to be small courtrooms in the Whitlatch building. With the Board of Revisions and the hearings that they have, they can easily move into those hearing rooms. So it's actually surprisingly a very good fit for that group.
Is anything proposed to go to the courthouse?
No, there is not at this time. And we've done some, I just want to say that we've done some preliminary layouts just to kind of get that balance of what we need. We still have to meet with all the different departments to go over, what we're proposing and how that fits. So there's going to be some tweaking to this plan.
So it'll be basically several moves when we all move into our apartment building, it'll be a bigger cost, so to speak?
We'll have, moving from the administration building, those approximately 400 people will be moving to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different locations. And some of them are as simple as the Sterling building. There's 9 people currently in the administration building that work for HR. They will basically go to the Sterling building with the rest of HR. So that's kind of an easy move. There's a few people that will be moved over to the Lakeside Avenue building where we have our trades. We have a second floor that have offices that are not fully utilized, so we have some small group moving over there. But there'll be the interim move, and then from that, we will move to our final location at the new headquarters. So there is an additional cost to the interim move. We've acknowledged that at the very beginning, but the potential additional revenues and getting the hotel built earlier, it far outweighs the inconvenience and the cost of the intermittent move.
Are we gonna be made privy of that savings? So, when residents are asking us regarding, potential cost to move and then to move again?
Yes, we've done some preliminary cost estimating, and based on the additional revenues that we feel that we can receive by opening the hotel earlier, by saving construction cost, by closing the building up tight before winter hits. The contractor's not responsible for winter construction, so they anticipated that just on the hotel itself, opening it up sooner would be about a $10 million swing in the cost. So, and our relocation, if we're looking at a balance of 25,000 square feet, approximately $10 a square foot. I mean, even if we go a full year of lease, it would be around $500,000. So, the scale is much different.
Mr. Brady?
Good morning.
Morning.
As long as we're here, I was wondering where this one little tiny shop with about 19 or 20 people in it called the county council is going to be.
Preliminarily, we are proposing that they go into the space of the Planning Commission and lay out that spot. The Planning Commission would be moved over to Public Works, what we call the Test Lab, which is on the corner of West 25th and the Superior Viaduct. We have a building over there. So our goal with County Council was to keep you close to the council chambers here so that you would have to just walk across the street, basically.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Schramm?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the effective date we need to have to coordinate with whoever the design team is and designers? Because we haven't, I know that there's been a preliminary, it goes to committee next week. So in order to put these things in place, is there a date that we need to have? I mean, obviously the designers haven't even sat down. They haven't even designed the first pencil and paper, or the first digital computer hasn't hit.
Bonnie T. Wednesday to have everybody moved out of the administration building is October.
October what?
October of this year.
What is it? What date in October?
Oh,
that's a 30.
There's some debate on my department. I say October 1st. They're saying October 31st. So there's a big swing. But I anticipate it being a series of moves, so it's just not going to be one set date. So I would like it to be in the first half of October. That still gives us some buffer time. The preliminary schedule, and again, as you know, we haven't hired a design builder, but it's important that we do abatement and demolition in the winter of this year. So if we can start abatement say November, December, and demolition during that time,
Okay.
that we'll be ready to start.
So we need to be out, obviously, before they start finding the little pearls that they're going to find in that whole building and start cleaning it out. So that's going to
Yes.
be, the cleanup schedule will probably be starting in a November, December timeframe.
Yes.
Okay. All
Yes.
right.
Now, and again, when you start thinking about what the process is going to be, we move the people out, that's good.
Yeah,
But we're moving into space that is already furnished or mostly furnished, so there's still all that furniture that's in the building. Excuse me. We would have to move that furniture out, particularly the furniture that we might want to reutilize in the headquarters, store that somewhere, have what we call a garage sale, to be able to sell that to vendors that might want to recycle the furniture, sell it to the general public. So there's a process on disposing of that furniture also, that we have to have some time for.
We used to refer to it as, when we did some school renovations, that every family has to do dishes in the bathtub at least one time in their lives as they renovate a house or do something of that nature. That's, and everybody that's
I've
ever
done
done
that.
that knows exactly what dishes in the bathtub means.
I did that when I was 6 months pregnant. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
all right. The communications plan, it sounds like my colleague over here had not received a whole lot of communication, nor have, I think, a lot of folks, as far as, everybody's move is personal to them. It's nice that you have a plan, it's nice that we got these things, but it's personal to their desk and their office and their driving to work and things like that. I think it's critical that we get a communications plan worked up on this, because it's going to be, I think you might as well go ahead and do it all the way through. The preliminary plan and then the subsequent plan that we know we're going to be moving. There's no reason not to be. It's a master checklist, and we have moving czars whenever we move, and so the czar literally controls, and so it keeps everybody up to speed, so there's no guesswork. I think it would be very beneficial to at least this side of the aisle to know. It sounds like you were not up to speed as to where the location was, or at least had preliminary thoughts on.
Well, I mean, I've heard rumors.
Okay, well, the rumor mill shouldn't be a rumor mill. You should talk to our leadership, please.
Yeah,
in regards to-
and what I was saying is we wanted to kind of work out a plan just so we could get the balance, so we can get started on the balance space. We are trying to schedule meetings with all the directors, all the different departments, to go over what their plan is, what we're recommending, and then there'll still be some tweaks after that point. To your point about moving, I mean, we are now currently negotiating with our moving consultant. We, through a qualifications-based selection process, we selected RSI to be our moving consultant. So we would negotiate with them. They are going to help us with the intermittent move. That also includes a communication plan. So you're absolutely right. So they're going to be our consultant through this whole process, the intermittent move, as well as the final move, our record retention part of it, or disposing of our records, as well as assisting us with the disposal of our assets too.
And like the analogy of dishes in the bathtub, you find that sometimes you have excess stuff that in the process of cleaning up that can get pitched. You find that there are excess duties and things that maybe you were doing that you say, well, now that we've gone through this, do we really need this function, or can we reduce? This is a perfect time to also be building a consolidated budget, because we can really be building almost from a zero-based budget as we go through these two steps. And it allows us to, I think, be good stewards of the money as it flows through, because I think it's going to get scrutinized. Because my concern is going to be things like phone numbers, IT. Some of these aren't even going to transfer. And if we have to if we're relocating offices within 2 or 3 times in the same space, it'll be confusing to the public too in that respect. And to my colleague's point, I see no reason why you would want to take the building off on the sale market. There's nothing that says we couldn't sell it subject to the lease. If you get a willing buyer who wants to buy it, then we can go back and lease it. I would if you find somebody live that wants to buy it, man, I wouldn't take anything off the market. Keep it moving, and then we can be a tenant for the last 3 or 4 months, so the buyer would get a best of both worlds.
To your point about the IT, there's obviously, we've been in a lot of communications with Jeff Mowry in regard to the IT moves. Because of the intermittent moves, the final move almost looks simple compared to these intermittent moves, but the benefit to moving in the space that we already currently are in is we have all the fiber there. It's all set up for IT. It's just a matter of maybe doing some short runs here and there. And I know I'm simplifying it because I don't work in the IT department, but there's a benefit to moving into space that we already own or lease.
Yeah, sometimes the phone company will not allow you to move those first 3 digits of an exchange if you move too far outside of where they have it allocated.
Yeah, and I think because we're on we have our own fiber ring, I'm not sure that comes into play, but point taken.
Okay, thank you. I've just a couple quick questions. How many so we've got how many employees in the current county administration building?
I'm using the number 400, but I think it's a little over 400.
And how many individual locations will these 400 be dispersed to?
Right now, we're looking at the Whitlatch Building, 1642 Lakeside, Courthouse Square, Lakeside Place, which is where the Planning Commission is, Reserve Square, the Bridge Garage, and the Sterling Building.
6, okay. Obviously, this is part of a much larger concept of this entire hotel $350 million plan, and there's still a lot of unanswered questions as it relates to that in total, and we haven't been fully briefed on the details of some of the proposal. I just have some general concerns with this intermediate move on constituent confusion, going from 1 location to 6. Maybe to Councilman Schron's point, a communications plan to evaluate that. But anybody who's ever moved a business once, let alone twice in 10 months, we're going to have we're not even going to have an administration building really for a 10-month period. We're just going to have our operations dispersed throughout a region within the city of Cleveland. So we're going to have 3 county headquarters, effectively, if we were looking at it that way, in 10 months. The operational, I've moved businesses to new buildings, to existing buildings, and gone through a lot of the things this project will entail from start to finish, from existing to new. It's a disaster. There are things that come up that I don't need to, you've done this before. So I have some concerns about the operational concerns that might be a soft cost associated with this, because we will probably lose 2 to 3 weeks of operational efficiencies, possibly with each move from the county to get from where it was to where it needs to be. Maybe longer, and I hesitate, with 6 individual locations, and the county, even with 2 departments being in different, or 1 department, 2 locations. That department, obviously, there'll be some inherent communication issues just working within itself, but the departments that work with each other are going to be, there'll be a learning curve and some challenges faced with that. So although conceptually the convention center hotel project, whatever the $350 million that's been presented, I don't necessarily have an issue with the concept. I still have challenges in understanding the financing, but the immediacy of us moving out early, I think may cause more challenges than benefit at the end of the day. So, and since I serve on that board of control, I've got a decision to make here, although I may be in the minority, but it's a larger conceptual issue that we need to consider.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Brady.
I think the chairman makes some points, but I just want to remind everybody that the federal government moved from Philadelphia to a swamp in 1800 and managed to pull it off. Well, I think we're gonna be okay. I think one thing we might keep in mind, though, is that if we're not able to open this convention in 16, we may be in these quarters a little longer than we expect.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Thank you. This will be before Board of Control on Monday.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please, the next item on the agenda deals with matters referred to committee. Will you please read the first item?
Noting that all of these items were in fact referred from the July 23rd council meeting. Resolution number 2013-0158, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga, an amendment to Article 2, Section 2.0312, Powers and Duties, and Article 9, Sections 9.01 through 9.05, and to add Section 9.06, renaming the Human Resource Commission, changing the appointing authority, clarifying its duties, powers and duties, and establishing an office of the Director of Human Resources, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Very good, thank you. And I'll just remind the members of the committee that it will take 6 votes to move something to council for referral to be placed on the ballot. If it receives, and it will require 8 to be placed on the ballot. If it doesn't receive 6, it'll die in committee. We have 2 sponsors on this, and between the 2 sponsors, Councilmember Conwell and Miller, who wishes to address the committee first? Okay, Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman and my colleagues, this resolution clarifies the roles and responsibilities of the Human Resources Commission. Much of what is in this amendment are clarifications that the Human Resources Commission brought to the Charter Review Commission, and they accepted. It also specifically names the Director of Human Resources and says that person shall be appointed by the executive, subject to the confirmation by council. This is in fact the exact same amendment that the Charter Review Commission recommended, with 2 changes, and the first change is that the Charter Review Commission intended to recommend that the Director of Human Resources be confirmed by council, but inadvertently did not include that in their report, so we restored that. And the second change is that this resolution recommends that the council, rather than the executive, appoint the Human Resources Commission, which is now renamed the Personnel Review Board. And the reason for making that recommendation is that the executive, who hires almost all the county staff, should not be the same person who appoints the commission that hears employee grievances. I would just remind everybody that prior to the new government, employee grievances were heard by the State Personnel Board of Review, a body entirely separate from county government. And so this resolution would restore a certain amount of independence to that process and create a perception of fairness in the hearing process. The resolution does provide that if the amendment is approved, that the council would not immediately appoint members of the Personnel Review Board. Rather, it would be a matter that as existing terms expire, that then the council would make new appointments, and the existing appointees could be reappointed if we so desired. And I would want to make it very clear that that we have no complaint about the current performance of the of the Human Resources Commission. They've done extremely well, but we think it's a matter of proper structure, proper checks and balances, and proper perception, and that's why this is being put forward. And so I would ask for the council's support to move this item for recommendation to go on to the ballot. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Ms. Conwell?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just would like to reiterate what Councilman Miller stated. This was never intentionally to change the Human Resource Commission commissioners that sit on the board or were currently picked. It was just basically in the spirit of checks and balance system. So there was never any intention, nor will there be an intention, to change the commissioners that sit on there now. And moving forward, in most likelihood, if they wanted to sign up again for another term, that would possibly be looked at as well. It was never the intent for that. So basically, if you're an employee of the county, you want to have an equitable system in which you have grievances. And from the beginning, this was never an equitable system for the employees. So that was the full intent, and it was discussed way before the HR commissioners were even named or appointed. So I don't want this to seem like it was, I think the media and things have played it like it was an attack on the commissioners. These were things that we've decided from the beginning when we started talking about what do we each individually think was not a checks and balance system in the charter. So my colleague, Councilman Miller, stated all the changes that will occur in this, and I hope that my colleagues will support it. Basically on the standpoint, if you were an employee, how would you like to be treated? And you would like an equitable system when you had a legitimate grievance. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any other comment on this one?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady?
I think that the council people have made some compelling points on this issue, but I want to state from the beginning, because it's going to be a long day, that I believe that we should put very few of these charter amendments on the ballot, because the ballot will be so lengthy, and that while a lot of these are going to have merit, and I think they can be reconsidered to put on the ballot next year and in the years to come. And so I'm going to be looking for those that I consider to be absolutely necessary. I think that this is one that I would like to take a look at next year, not because I don't think it has merit, because I do, but because I will be voting to not put very many amendments on the ballot, and so you'll know from 9:40 in the morning that I'll be voting against most of these amendments.
Okay, very good, thank you. Just a quick, I'm sorry, Mr. Schron.
To follow up on Mr. Brady's comments, I too think that in order to be effective, you have to be focused on what amendments go on the ballot, because I think that if you have too many, I think there's a likelihood that they're going to get voted down. The question, Mr. Chairman, is this the forum where we're going to vote up or down which ones go on, or do we want to get them all that have merit over to the full council and then let that 8-vote decision go? And so I'm just looking for leadership from you. I agree in principle with Mr. Brady, but I'm going to be voting the other way just to get them from here into the committee, the full council, and then let the full council decide on the 8 votes, so that we have all that have merit at that point in time. Not because I want to presuppose which one of these ones today don't get the 6 votes, because I think there's some that are already before us as council that I don't believe are going to get 8 votes, and so I don't want to set up a precedent that or anybody's thoughts that just because they've already gotten to council that those are going to be the ones that will appear on the ballot, because I think that on my personal side that I'm not going to be voting for some of the ones that are already on for consideration.
Mr. Chairman?
Real quick, if I can, Mr. Miller, just to respond to Mr. Schron's statement. Yeah, it's my hope that we will consider these individually and the ultimate decision which to move forward to the ballot we made in council and not in this committee. I hope that answered that question. Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chairman, my approach today is going to be similar to what Jack suggested. I think that that there's going to be some that are just not going to have the general level of support, but any amendment that I basically support, I'm going to vote for, and even some that I don't think are fully put together yet, but where I want the discussion to continue, I'm going to vote for those, and I think that today we'll start to see a narrowing down process. And in the past, the 8 votes has proven to be a high standard that has taken down some stuff, and I think that that between doing some prioritization and making note of some amendments that would not affect things that don't come up for 5 years or longer, I think we'll be able to get to a workable number.
Okay, very good. And I'd like to just focus us back on the matter before us. I think there's been comment made and 2 different opinions on the subject of which items to move forward and how to proceed. I'm not sure further discussion is necessary. I have a comment on this specific resolution, but I'll reserve my comments to after all my colleagues have had an opportunity. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this matter? No, okay. My position on this, and there are 3 items on the agenda, this being one of them, where there's a similar subject matter of independence, and some, one at least borders on an possible internal control issue. This is one I believe, and I believe Mr. Miller said it, when we talk about employees, and oftentimes perception is reality, employees feeling as if they're uncomfortable filing an appeal if the appellate board is hired by the same administration that is in the process of creating the policy that's causing the appeal. So I've been pretty supportive of this concept from when it was originally introduced a year ago and to where it is today. So I just wanted to mention that this, the sheriff, and the investment advisory committee all deal with similar subject matter of independence, and I just want us to be aware of at least where I stand on this issue. So if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to refer this matter to council for second reading at the August 13th meeting. Is there a motion? Well,
I so move.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Because of the nature of these, Madam Clerk, I think we'll do a roll call vote on these items. So if the clerk will please call the roll for Resolution 2013-015. I'm sorry. Well, before I do that, Mr. Boyle, I failed to recognize. Did you want to make a statement?
Well, in light of Councilman Brady's comments, and I think they're accurate. I mean, I do anticipate that there's going to be lengthy discussions on a lot of these things, and I think that as this matter was presented in some iteration in the past, and I think the executive made his position fairly well known on this issue at that point. I'm not going to reiterate it. I will just, for the record, note that the appointing authority aspect in its current form is what I would label as some level of hybrid involving both the executive and the legislative branch, and to that extent, both the Charter Review Commission as well as the HRC members who came and testified did not recommend changing the appointing authority. I'm just offering that and just for edification more than anything else.
Okay, very good. All right, now I'm sorry. We'll go ahead and call roll call vote to place this, to refer this to council for second reading.
Calling the roll, Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Brady? No. Mr. Germana?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
Mr. Schron?
Yes?
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon? Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good, thank you. Will the clerk please read the next item into the agenda?
Resolution number 2013-0159, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment to Article 2, Section 2.032 of the Charter of Cuyahoga County relating to the appointment authority of the county executive and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Thank you. Madam President Conley and Mr. Miller are sponsors. President's not here at this time. Mr. Miller, will you please address this item?
Mr. Chairman and my colleagues, this item relates to the appointment authority of the executive, and it contains two parts. And these two parts are the exact same as were recommended by the Charter Review Commission. The only thing that's different from the Charter Review Commission is that the language regarding the appointment of emerging demographics was taken out. The first thing that this amendment does is that it extends the amount of time that the council gets in order to review the executive appointments from 30 days to 60 days. As everybody knows, by the time we receive the appointment, get it to committee, review the qualifications, screen for possible conflicts of interest, move it out of committee and back to the council, the 30 days in some circumstances has proven not enough, and I believe that this change has the support of both the administration and the council. The second provision is a process under which the executive may appoint interim officers for up to 120 days, and this applies only to people at the director level and includes the inspector general, but it does not include any of the boards and commissions. And it also says that any extension of an interim appointment beyond the 120 days would need to be approved by council. The original concept of this was broader and included 180 days and included both the directors and the boards of commission and commissioners. But late in the process at the Charter Review Commission, they determined to narrow it a bit to the language that we have before us, and so this language on the interim officers is the same as was recommended by the Charter Review Commission. And so I think that both of these deal with the improvements that are very much needed. I would add on the interim officers that if we don't have a provision like this, that one of two things is going to happen. Either the executive is going to appoint interim officers anyway, and there's going to be a somewhat messy discussion over whether they have the authority to do so because it's not specifically authorized in the charter. And the second possibility is that they won't appoint interim officers, and you'll have people trying to get jobs done without really having the authority to do them. And I think either of those situations would be clearly inferior to providing clear language in the charter, which, as written in this amendment, I believe is fair and reasonable. So I commend this item to your consideration ask that it be recommended onto the ballot.
Very good, thank you. Any other discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to refer Resolution 2013-0159 to council for second reading at the August 13th meeting. Is there a second? Second. Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call roll call vote on Resolution 2013-0159?
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brady? Yes. Mr. Germana? Yes. Mr. Gallagher? Yes. Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers? Yes. Ms. Simon? Yes. Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good, thank you. Item C has been placed at the end of the agenda today. Item D, Resolution 2013-0161. Will the clerk please read the item into the record?
Resolution number 2013-0161, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment to Article 12, Section 12.09 of the Charter of Cuyahoga County, adjusting the timeline for the appointment process and the commencement of the term of the Charter Review Commission for the year in which the appointment is made, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Great, thank you. Council President Conley and I are sponsors. I wish she was here to take the lead on this because I believe she had the notes to do this. This item is before us. It was has to do with the timing, and if we recall, the Charter Review Commission made a recommendation for this one as well. And I believe actually I'm listed as a sponsor because I'm chair of the committee. So what happened was this year, as we recall, the Charter Review Commission, the charter originally stated that the commission was to be put in place by September with no definitive date, and we ran into some issues, as we recall, with what September meant. By the time they were impaneled, the time frame was cut short by not having the full breadth of maybe an expectation of September 1 to July 1 to properly deliberate. So this further just clarifies exactly the time frame and how the appointments are going to proceed. Are there any questions on this proposal? Hearing none, I'll make a motion for Resolution 2013-0161, refer to committee for second reading on the August 13th meeting. Motion's been seconded by Ms. Conwell. Will the clerk please call the roll? Oh, I'm sorry, any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm voting yes because it's a clearly desirable amendment that responds to a problem, but also noting that the next Charter Review Commission doesn't come up for 5 years, and this is one that we may later decide doesn't need to be a this year amendment.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I agree with that also. This is not a immediate need, but I'll vote it out of committee.
Okay, very good. I agree with my two colleagues on that point. Clerk, please roll call vote, please.
Calling the roll, Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana? Yes. Mr. Gallagher? No. Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers? Yes. Ms. Simon? Yes. Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good, thank you. The next item on the agenda is Resolution 2013-0162. Will the clerk please read the item?
Resolution number 2013-0162, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment to Article 5, Section 5.01, appointment and confirmation of officers, and Section 5.08, sheriff, powers, duties, and qualifications, establishing the term of appointment and process of removal of the sheriff, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Very good, thank you. There are three sponsors on this, Council President Conley, Councilmember Miller, and myself. Councilmember Miller, would you do the honors?
Yes. Mr. Chairman and my colleagues, this this resolution is very similar to one that was recommended by the Charter Review Commission. The Charter Review Commission's draft had some technical issues, but from a conceptual standpoint, what we're recommending is essentially the same that they recommended, and what the purpose of this amendment is to keep the sheriff as an appointed office rather than separately elected, to follow the charter program of not having a lot of separate, independently elected executive level officers that might compete with each other and have separate IT systems and separate human resources systems and so on. But the goal is also to provide a certain amount of independence, and to do so, it provides that the sheriff would be appointed for a set term of 4 years. And during that set term, the sheriff could be dismissed only with the approval of 2/3 of the council. It also provides that if a vacancy in the sheriff's office occurs during term, that there would be an appointment through the regular process for the remainder of the term, and that if there's less than 2 years to go on the remainder of the term, that the executive would have the option to recommend an appointment that would be for the remainder of the term plus an additional term. I would point out that the executive has expressed some concerns about this amendment, which I'm willing to consider and listen to. I'm definitely going to vote for moving this out of committee this morning to keep the discussion going, but also I think that we should give some consideration as to whether this is a this year amendment or whether it could wait. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Brady?
For myself, back when the charter change was first put before the public in 2009, this was one of the areas that concerned me. I had, and being concerned, I spoke with people from other counties, including counties that had a system somewhat similar to the one we were considering. And in most counties, they still elected their own sheriffs, and were sort of, I guess because of their own experience, kind of astonished that we would have an appointment of a sheriff. I have evolved from believing that we should elect the sheriff to being comfortable with the appointment of the sheriff, but I still do feel strongly that there needs to be independence in the sheriff's office, and so there are components to this that appeal to me very, very much so. I believe that once a sheriff is appointed, that they should be appointed to a particular term, and that during that term that they should have autonomy and independence from the executive. But I will still be voting no on this moving out of the committee today, because again, I don't think it's something that is of the nature that needs to be dealt with this fall.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments? I have a comment on this. We are the only county of the 88 counties that has an appointed sheriff, all 87. Other 87s have electeds, which does in itself promote a form of independence. And I believe, and if we look at some consistency within our charter and items we may be proposing, the independent, the internal auditor, as an example, is an investigative body, which is independent and of confirmation through council or an appointment through council. The Inspector General, we've set up provisions where removal is only through council confirmation. That's an investigative body. I believe that because the sheriff has investigative authority, that position too should have, and as Mr. Brady said, feel as if there's and should have a certain level of independence. I believe the staggered term will promote continuity from a sheriff between executive and from one executive to the other, assuming not a reelection. I believe the challenge that was proposed or that presented itself when this was originally discussed was the term as not the 4 years, but that the 4 years did not, as Mr. Miller pointed out, did not allow for an interim appointment. It looked like the 4 years could be a rotating 4 years instead of a constant 4 years. So I'm supportive of this, both on the grounds of protecting the sheriff because the sheriff has investigative authority, maintain as much independence as possible, but it also does provide a provision for removal should there be due cause. So I'll be supporting this amendment. I didn't know if there was any comment from the administration. Mr. Boyle? Any comment on this proposal?
The sheriff is here, and I've had an opportunity to speak to him. I was just hovering over I've had an opportunity to speak to the sheriff as well as the members of the Charter Review Commission, and the comments that you made, Councilman, and that the other members of council have made are accurate. I mean, one of the things that the commission was very cognizant of was maintaining the independence of the investigatory aspects of county government. That while we do have the new charter and allowed the appointment rather than the election of the county sheriff, it was important to maintain, there was certainly a desire not to have it be an elected sheriff, but to maintain the independence, and I believe that this structure allows it. Both current sheriff as well as former Sheriff Reed also came and presented to the Charter Review Commission, and this is the draft that's in front of you. I think the reason it came back was there? The 4-year. Yeah, there was some issues with the staggered term portion of it, but in terms of the concept that's in front of you, both the current sheriff as well as Sheriff Bova as well as Executive Fitzgerald have had an opportunity to review it, and I think that this is a good fashion to allow the independence to continue in that office.
Okay, very good, thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I will make a motion for Resolution 2013-0162, referral to council for second reading at the August 13th meeting.
Second.
Motion's made and second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, clerk, roll call vote, please.
Calling the roll, Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon? Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good, thank you. The next item on the agenda is Resolution 2013-0163. Will the clerk please read the item?
Resolution number 2013-0163, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment adding Article 6, Section 6.03 of the Charter of Cuyahoga County, establishing the Investment Advisory Committee in the Charter, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Very good, thank you. This is an item that I brought forward, and let me explain a little bit about what this does and provide a little history and feedback. Sorry.
No, it's nothing for
Oh, yeah, yes. I've got lunch coming at noon, so, you know, I've got pizza for 20. Yeah. This item, and let me provide a little history on investment advisory committees through the ORC. The investment advisory committees through the ORC is established to have 3 or 5 members, and the 3 members typically if it's a 3-member commission, include 2 members of the Board of County Commissioners, and the 3rd member being the treasurer. If it's a 5-member board, which or 5-member commission, which our county had under the previous administration, it's 3 members of the Board of County Commissioners, so all 3, plus the treasurer, plus the clerk of courts. The commonality between those is all of those individuals are independently elected, and in each of those instances, a majority of the legislative body is involved in the decision-making processes of the Investment Advisory Committee. So under the 3-member structure, you have 2 members of the Board of County Commissioners, 2 of 3. Under the 5-member commission, there are 3 of 5. I'm not advocating that this body take a majority position on the Investment Advisory Committee. Under our structure and the relationship when the ORC provides for 2 members of the Board of County Commissioners to serve on a committee or a commissioner and appointment process, we have basically allocated one of those to be through council and one through the executive. And that's how this committee's been operating so far. There's been a member of council. Mr. Miller served on this the first 2 years, and Mr. Schron serves on the Investment Advisory Committee today, the executive and the treasurer. The conflict that I see in this, and it was just brought to my attention recently, was that the treasurer is actually an employee of the executive, and although confirmed by council, is still under the day-to-day supervision and direction of the executive. And as we talk about creating transparency and clarity and independence, there may be the perception of, and my statements refer nothing to the individuals in any of these positions today, just the concept in general, that there may be the perception of undue influence as it relates to making investment decisions on behalf of the county. So this proposal does 2 things. Number 1, it changes the composition to be a member of council, and the proposal today, Mr. Schron may have a suggested amendment. The county treasurer, who by ORC is the investment authority for the county, and the county prosecutor. Now, there's been a lot of question as to why the county prosecutor. The reason that when I presented this that the prosecutor was chosen is that is the only other elected official in our charter. And so what I tried to do in concept was have as many of the Investment Advisory Committee members be accountable to the electorate. And so that is why I chose a member of council, the prosecutor, and the treasurer, although not directly elected by the electors of the county, but is the investment authority pursuant to ORC. Now, the ORC does give counties the opportunity to replace the treasurer as a member of the Investment Advisory Committee. We, because of our home rule authority, have the ability to change that regardless of what the ORC stated. So that's my rationale for bringing up the change in the composition, was to provide more independence to the committee so that there's not the perception of undue influence. The other provision in here just called for the rules, policies, and procedures of the Investment Advisory Committee to be approved through the traditional council process. The reason I felt this was important was because we're fundamentally, we're just under $1 billion in the investment account. I believe it's $980 million. And that's a lot of money. It almost equals our operating budget on an annual basis of $1.3 billion. And we are ultimately, in my opinion, responsible for the finances of the county and accountable to how those monies are spent. I believe it is at least prudent for us to have a role in crafting the rules, policies, and procedures of the Investment Advisory Committee. Those are the 2 fundamental issues contained in this resolution, and I'll entertain any questions if there are any on this. Mr. Schron.
A couple questions and comments in regards to this suggestion. One would be, in order to get the same concept or spirit to which I think has been referred to by the chairman in regards to this, I think it could still be achieved by having an appointment from council, 2, the prosecutor, and 3, an appointment from the executive's office, which could include the executive, it could include the treasurer, it could include whatever that appointment would come, just as we have the discretion with our appointment. If in the event that the executive chooses to appoint him or herself to that investment advisory, then I think it still behooves us to allow the treasurer to be an ex officio in a non-voting status on that. Having attended only 2 meetings myself, there is not a lot of dynamics that goes on in the investment advisory committee. Once policy is set, so it's not the most I guess, thought-provoking process. Even though you have a lot of money, there's not a lot of discretion as to what you can invest the funds into as far as within the Ohio Revised Code. So there's, from that standpoint. But I think it still would behoove us to have the treasurer in an advisory role. This way, you could still get to the same spirit of 3 independent, 3 folks out of a voting block. You still can get to that same accomplishment and have the treasurer be the consultant on the committee, just like we use outside consultants currently to bring forth investment advice outside. We would then have the treasurer. And actually, in some respects, I think it might even be better to have the treasurer in that role, because then they can be speaking in terms of their suggestions as to how the policy should go, and then turn it over to the 3 independent folks. And if somebody is challenging why the prosecutor, what are their investment knowledge and what's their background, you could ask that same question about any of the appointments coming forth if they come out of strictly a legislative body. And the previous clerk of courts was one of the 5 in the previous selection process, so they would not be probably that much different than the prosecutor from that standpoint. On the question of policy, I do have some comments about this body setting the investment policy, the risk being that if there is some dynamics going on in investments and investment changes, and I know that we are certainly having those conversations now, having been there for a grand total of 2 meetings, we're already talking about looking at, can we be a little more aggressive in taking advantage of some other investment opportunities other than what we are currently doing. Still within the bounds of the Ohio Revised Code, but we have not taken, like a lot of things in the past, we didn't really stretch out in Old County, some of the Old County government. So I would not want to come back into here every single time. If you're looking to change, to bring it back before the 11 members of council, that's why you hire that's why we have the investment advisory board to make those decisions. So if you appoint them and you think their philosophies are working, I would really question as to whether you need to get into the weeds at this body to be actually oversighting what they're doing. If you don't like it, we replace the member that we've got on the board and bring forth a policy in the hopes that they would, and of course, if there's anything going on that's improper, we've got so many new investigative powers in the government that didn't exist before. So that's my comments on the policies.
Any discussion from council? Mr. Miller and then Ms. Simon.
Mr. Chairman and my colleagues, I've spent time mulling this amendment on sleepless nights, and I respectfully come to where I don't support this amendment. I see the interim investment of the county's funds as primarily an executive function, and I think for there to be 2 from the administration and 1 from the council, which gives us some input, is appropriate, and that we may have a role in setting broad investment policy, but generally would not want to weigh in on every investment policy decision, and so at a minimum, this is probably had the shortest amount of time of discussion of any of the proposals that we're discussing today, and I think we should not do this now and see if the issues that we're concerned about can be resolved short of a charter amendment. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Ms. Simon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with my colleagues with regard to this. I'm not going to be supportive of this, and primarily, I just don't see this as a pressing issue or vital issue to the county. I think things are running fine, and I don't think we need to shake this one up.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Germana, then Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate, your point of view on this. I don't think the prosecuting attorney is the right solution. We should have somebody with expertise, and again, keeping the treasurer there. The treasurer is a professional that has gone through the council approval. The fact that it doesn't need to be elected official, as long as elected officials get the right person there with the expertise. So I'm in favor of what you're saying, of having it independent, but I don't believe it should be the prosecuting. He may know the law, but finance is something completely different. So I'm going to be voting no again.
And just to that point, and the reason, once again, the reason I stated, I said the prosecutor was to have the elected accountability. If council, this is kind of the challenge we've run into, because we don't have that many elected officials in our current charter. We've got 11 council members, an executive, and a prosecutor. If you have, as an example, 2 appointees from the executive or 2 from the council of a 3-member board, you still have the same perception. So I don't know who would make that third selection, if not, who would make up that third selection, if not the prosecutor, based on the confines of our current charter. The issue, just real quick, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Gallagher, there was a point made regarding the rules, policies, and procedures. I'm not advocating in this document that council be engaged in voting up or down on the proposals of the charter of the Investment Advisory Committee, only the strategy to which they invest. So, for example, if the current concept of that the executive is bringing forward as far as purchasing debt from municipalities, as long as they're credit-worthy municipalities, I don't have an issue. I actually support the concept because everybody wins in the end. We earn more interest income. The communities pay less than interest expense. So that's not the challenge, but that's a divergent concept than the current investment policy. And I would just think that council would want to be supportive of, or not supportive, I would be supportive of that if it was brought forward, that concept, at least so we're aware of how the nearly $1 billion is being spent. So that's the reason I brought both those items forward. So I mean, look, at the end of the day, I mean, I've been on the short end of many votes. I don't take it personally. We each bring forward concepts that we believe are in the best interest in our own opinions, and this is one I believe in. But if my colleagues don't, we're still having pizza whenever it gets here.
You're still playing.
Yeah. Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we discussed, I also think the sheriff is misplaced in this, and also, in essence, the sheriff, I'm sorry, or the prosecutor. And it's early, too. And as I had discussed with you, removal basically of the executive out of this, I think, is really not the way to go. But if we were to do something like this, my suggestion was to you is the executive, a council member, and most probably the probate administrative judge, but we'd have to have buy-in from that judge. I think if you're looking for an elected official of important stance within the community and in the county and the hierarchy of the courts, that would be the seat that you would go to. But this would have to be reworked, and again, like I said, buy-in from that administrative judge. And I'm not certain that we would have that.
Thank you. Mr. Schron.
Some of my colleagues' comments in regards to who that third person is and why it would be best to try to pick somebody that's an elected official. And to Mr. Germanis, I don't know that there's any magic. The Ohio Revised Code does authorize, obviously, folks who don't have the financial background to be on that committee. And sometimes, if you're on those investment committees, you find that that person brings in another point of view that actually adds clarity to it, not necessarily that you have, your expertise is going to come from your advice from your treasurer, I think, on something of that nature. The risk of having 2 appointments coming out of the same body, when now it's only, with it only being 3, is that there's a potential that you could be affecting investment advisory philosophy on a political nature. And that, I think, really is where we've come from on this government, is something we need to very scrupulously be concerned about. And the only way I think that you get there is to have 3 independent voices on there. And I'm not advocating the executive be removed, and that's why I specifically said the appointment comes from the executive, which could be the executive, him or herself, so you keep that voice there. The treasurer clearly is your advice and consent, and but the treasurer doesn't have to vote in regards to the philosophy. The treasurer, if they can present a compelling article or argument as to why we should be doing such of an investment philosophy, that's what the board is there for. If you sit on other kinds of nonprofits or profit boards, you find that you have a very diverse board, and all which will come with different elements of expertise, and it's that basis of spreading out the ideas and concepts that gives it its actually strength. And so that's why I think that whether it's the prosecutor or, as Mr. Gallagher suggested, the presiding judge, perhaps the answer is this is not ripe for going on the ballot, but I think it is ripe as far as a concept of keeping that, of establishing some way of getting that diversity of opinions through 3 different elected officials.
Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an interesting discussion. I think that one thing it points out that, we as a body, but even as individuals, I think haven't taken a look at is across the country, the different models for having a county executive, because they do vary, and there are counties that have elected treasurers as well as executives, and so these are not. I mean, your point is not is taken, for what it's meant to be, we do have a system. We do have an unusual, a unique system in Cuyahoga County with this charter of more authority invested in the executive than almost any other place in the country. So it's not surprising that these issues would come up.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Strawn.
Just procedural question. Unlike the Charter Review Commission suggestions where we could not amend anything from this date going forward, even a word or a comma, these originating from council, if we find that a word or a change or even dropping out the concept of the policy review, we still would have the ability, if we vote this out on the 6th, to make those changes, unlike what came forth from the is that I just wanted you to just verify the procedural differences between this language and other language.
Correct. At any point from this point forward, we can amend. We can amend this as an example in committee today. If it passes out and there needs to be a further amendment on second reading or third reading, we can make amendments to these. It was just the Charter Review Commission sponsored amendments we could not amend at all. So yes, so Mr. Strawn, if you wish to have the 3 members of the committee be, as an example, the county executive replacing the treasurer, a member of council appointed by the council president, prosecuting attorney, and the county treasurer shall serve as an ex officio member as an amendment, that could be made right here and voted on and move forward with that amendment or any other amendments in this document.
If the committee is comfortable with that, having a written, we've followed the practice of having written amendments in front of everybody, but if people are comfortable, I would have no problem with amending, saying that the appointment would be the appointment from the executive and the treasurer becoming an ex officio member, if people are comfortable. I mean, it's not very complicated to understand.
Right, and I'll second that for discussion. So is there any discussion on that amendment?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Mr. Germano.
I don't see why the treasurer would have to be ex officio. I mean, the treasurer is going to be a qualified professional that's been vetted by council. And so I'm very comfortable with having the county treasurer as one of those members, because
Write the result and give it to
he's been nominated by the executive, and he's been vetted. He or she is professional. And this is the Investment Advisory Committee. Why not have that person as a voting member?
So are you,
My amendment was just to suggest that if the executive chooses not to appoint that person, just as we could choose to appoint any one of the 11 of us, for that matter, we can choose to appoint, I believe, anybody not necessarily even on the council if they are our representative. So they, as could the county executive.
we could, because of our authority, we can make this a 5-person committee, have the treasurer, the executive, 2 members of council, and the prosecutor, if we wanted to. We can make all 11 of us the prosecutor and the executive member. I mean, we could do whatever we want to do, pursuant to home rule and our ability to change this. There's Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, has a philosophy. If your committee is so large that you can't serve them out of one pizza, you've got too many people on the committee. So I want to try to keep it, no relation to lunch, but just trying to keep it consistent. The smaller, I think, oftentimes.
Did you only bring one pizza?
I just brought one. It's in very small pieces, so I hope everybody's not very hungry. So we can change it. I mean, look, initially the reason I thought the treasurer was along the same lines that Mr. Germano was mentioning. But I'm okay with the amendment as is as well, because you've got the treasurer providing the information, the input necessary for the decision makers to make their decisions, often as it's presented to us today, where the treasurer or the fiscal officer makes recommendations to us. Not all of us are versed in every issue that's before us. We rely on experts to provide us with the information to make the decision. So right now, there's just one amendment that's been made and seconded. Mr. Boyle?
And this is a bit, this amendment didn't come or spring forth from any of the discussions, I think, before the Charter Review Commission. And so to that extent, I think I'm comfortable in speaking not on behalf of the Charter Review Commission, but rather as a member of the administration. I find it a bit odd, I guess, that in a discussion involving the county's investment strategy, there's been no discussion or even a reference to the SAFE crisis that plunged this county into catastrophic economic situations, what was that, 2 decades ago. And I think one of the aspects of the concept of having a charter and having a charter government is that we wanted to invest some of the professional aspects in professional people, and to divest the investment strategy into the hands of people solely by their status as an elected official rather than by their role as an expert in the field, I think is not consistent with where we are. With that in mind, I do share the comments that, of course, you do want your elected officials. They will be the ones who ultimately bear the responsibility for the actions. But looking at that, at the time I was an employee of the county when the SAFE crisis hit, the issue wasn't accountability. The issue was that we had $500 million that no longer were in the county treasurers due solely to the investment strategies conducted by the elected officials who were in charge of that. So I say that really more as an observation, and to think that if you're serious about moving the investment strategy decisions to people that don't have that expertise or have the ability to access that expertise, in my mind, I don't think that that's consistent with what we as a county did when we passed the charter.
Mr. Schron?
Yeah, I'm kind of stunned by Mr. Boyle's comments, because I don't think either the way it's consistent currently being done or what's being suggested has any more expertise than what we had before, other than one individual, potentially the treasurer, being on there. I don't know that just because you're elected as a county executive or elected as a council person, you gain expertise in investment strategy. So we hope our best that we will provide our candidate that would have maybe be able to make a contribution, and we hope that the county executive's appointment would also come with some skills, but there's no guarantee. I don't believe you pick up in regards to that. And if you go back to the SAFE, what it was we also had a dominance of point of view coming from a single point. And at least by having 3 different points of view, you don't have it, you don't have 2/3 coming from a single point of view. So my pushback would be is that this would actually lend itself to be different than what we walked ourselves into under that investment strategy of the past. And you said nobody made reference to it. No, I did actually. I did want to allude in my reference of past. So I didn't want to get down into the weeds of the specifics of how we had made a mess before with our investment strategy.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
Thank you. I will defer to Mr. Boyle since he was here in the county government 20 years ago. But I was around, and my memory was that a treasurer who had been in place for 20 years and was in most quarters highly regarded, took some very bad advice from some consultants that he hired who took some chances with the county's investments, and what was ironically the SAFE program was given a lot of great publicity in a lot of quarters for being something revolutionary or idealistic or forward-thinking. And it turned out to be more risky, and a more conservative approach to investing the county's money was really what we needed, not a more creative one. And so I would, with all due respect, agree with my colleague that it was, in this case, it was the issue of an elected official taking bad advice from investment consultants. And not, and I think that the discussion is an appropriate one.
Thank you. Yeah, and the ORC provides that investment advisory committees may hire professional advisors to advise them, and which is what you would anticipate a group deliberating on such a high magnitude, or an event or events that have high fiscal exposure would do. So I don't believe that's, look, if we have the executive, a council member, and the prosecutor, as an example, with the treasurer as an ex officio member, obviously there was some public trust with those 3 elected officials for them to be in a position to provide oversight into county government. And so I'm comfortable with as many electeds as the ORC is provisioned to serve on this committee in order to provide that service and to provide the accountability with the advice of the treasurer or other organizations that provide financial advisement services. So there's currently an amendment, and I'll read the amendment for the clerk. Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Ms. Simon?
Mr. Chair, I'm not going to support the amendment just because I don't think this is ripe for a charter. So no matter what language we put here, this is not an expedient issue, and so I'm not going to support the amendment. This might be something we just started looking at, and we have time to deliberate and consider, but we have so much to talk about that is expedient. I won't be supporting the amendment.
No, and I appreciate that. And the reason, we did some research and talked to the law department, and the only way this could be effected was by charter amendment, not by ordinance or resolution. So that's why it was brought up now. If the situation had presented itself 3 months from now in the future, we'd be talking about it for next November, because it can only be effectuated during a general election. So that's why it's before us here today in this process. And I'd like to recognize Council President Conley is in attendance. So we have an amendment. I'll read the amendment, and we'll take a vote on the amendment. The amendment in section 6.03, Investment Advisory Committee, number 1, establishment and composition. There shall be an investment advisory committee which shall consist of the county executive or his or her appointee, a member of the county council appointed by the council president, and the prosecuting attorney, with the county treasurer serving as an ex officio member.
If not appointed.
If not appointed. No. The entire paragraph? All right. The establishment and composition. There shall be an investment advisory committee which shall consist of the county executive or his or her appointee, a member of the county council appointed by the president of council, prosecuting attorney, and the county treasurer shall serve as an ex officio member if not appointed. I'm assuming the appointment can be by either council or the executive. Okay. Okay. Madam Clerk, do you have that? Do you have that amendment?
Yes, if I may repeat, starting from shall consist of the county executive or his or her appointee, a member of the county council appointed by the president of council, the prosecuting attorney, and the county treasurer shall serve as ex officio member if not appointed.
That's correct. Let me ask, I'm sorry, Mr. Schron, to be the prosecuting attorney or his or her appointee, or definitively, because we're giving the other two the ability to, if they don't want to serve, they can appoint.
I had not thought that aspect out. It would be a friendly amendment if you want to change it.
Okay. Let's go ahead and do that. So the prosecuting attorney would be the prosecuting attorney or his or her appointee. And so that's from the motioner and the second.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
one other point of clarification. While ex officio members generally serve as non-voting members, it's not necessarily implied by that term. It was my understanding from the discussion that the treasurer serving in an ex officio capacity be a non-voting member. You might want to clarify that one way or the other if that's your intent.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you wanted the numbers to be odd. Right.
Right. So the language would be the ex officio member would be a non-voting member? Okay.
As an ex officio non-voting member.
Correct. Correct. Okay, so the motioner and second have concurred with that. All right, will the clerk just read the amendment, and then we'll take a roll call vote?
Reading the amendment, establishment and composition. There shall be an investment advisory committee which shall consist of the county executive or his or her appointee, a member of the county council appointed by the president of council, the prosecuting attorney or his or her appointee, and the county treasurer shall serve as ex officio non-voting member if not appointed.
Okay, very good. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Rogers?
I just want to highlight there's been, this discussion is primarily focused around having elected officials serving on this committee, and with the current motion, you could potentially have this committee where the member of council is the only elected official on the committee. Because
but I believe the concept is the ultimate accountability is to the elected official.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll on the amendment?
Calling the roll on the amendment. Mr. Miller? Yes. Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana?
No.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones? No. Mr. Rogers?
No.
Ms. Simon? No. Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
And Ms. Conley? No. The motion has been defeated.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any other discussion on the proposal? Hearing none, I will make a motion that Resolution 2013-0163 be referred to council for second reading on the August 13th agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll on Resolution 2013-0163.
Mr. Miller? No. Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana?
No.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones? Mr. Rogers?
No.
Ms. Simon? Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
And Ms. Conley? No. The motion has been defeated.
Very good, thank you. We have two more items on the agenda. The second item remaining involves the law director, who's asked us to move the item to the end of the agenda. We're trying to contact the law director because we envisioned we'd run a little later in the day, so I'm trying to understand. Can we try to find out when he may be able to attend?
Yes, I've been trying to reach him via text. He had an oral argument this morning, and so he may or may not. I don't think he anticipated it to run longer than an hour or two, but I'll do my best to get in touch with him.
It's Majid.
Yeah.
Only an hour of discussion.
The court sets the time limits.
Oh, there's a time. All right, very good, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and then with item G, Resolution 2013-0164. If the clerk will please read that item.
Resolution number 2013-0164, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment adding Article 14, Section 14.01 of the Charter of Cuyahoga County, establishing the agency of Inspector General in the Charter, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now, Councilmember Schron and I are co-sponsoring this. We each thought we were bringing the appropriate material. So if you'll bear with Mr. Schron as he as he tap dances through this one.
I apologize in the fact that I anticipated that you were bringing both the language to it. My amendment is one of which came forth from the suggestion from the Charter Review Commission lead that was taking the lead on that at the suggestion, which was Mr. McLaughlin, and it was to basically put a very short version of the Inspector General with authority to go into the Charter and not to go into all the details that has been submitted here. It's just that the Inspector General would be an approved member via the Charter, that it would be established and create the independence. And I apologize, I was under misimpression as to where it was coming from, but it was instead of being a narrative that would go on the ballot, it would be a short version that would say, we authorize the Inspector General that we create this, and I will get the specific language that we can put forth.
Well, and what we can do, because it appears we're going to have to take a recess and waiting for Mr. McCloof, is we can take a recess now, come back and address this issue, and between Mr. Schron and I will pull up the language and discuss it at that time. So we have two items left, this one and the Inspector General, and we're still trying to find Mr. McCloof. Okay. Madam President, did you?
Well, before we get to the amendments, I'd like to speak to the merits of this, if it's appropriate now.
Sure. There's not. I don't have an issue with that.
Okay. I certainly believe in the office of the Inspector General. I voted for it. In fact, I had a conversation with I've had a number of conversations over the last year or so with the Inspector General. But I believe that this is an agenda item. This is an item that we essentially need to work out the kinks. It's not necessary to put this in the Charter. We have time to consider it, and I think that you all actually are making my point, that there's wording in here about exactly the duties of the Inspector General. Over the course of the term of the Inspector General, the next 2 to 4 years, we'll be able to work with this office and determine the exact scope. So I think that this is one that we can put on the back burner, we can put on the ballot in 2 years, but right now, as I say so often, you don't put something in the Charter, which is essentially our Constitution, without learning the long-term effect of it. So let's work with the Inspector General, continue the office as it is. We certainly have no reason to dispose of this office. And then in 2 to 4 years, when we've worked out all the details, for instance, the cost of the Inspector General. Right now, we're talking about $1 million a year. And I'm not trying to cut the budget, but we need to know over the course of a period of time, how much does this cost? And now she's gone into this whole other scope with the debarment. which may take some additional funding. I just think that right now, it ain't broke, so don't fix it, so let it go. And then after we've determined the total ramifications and exactly what you're saying, there's concern about the wording, then we don't want to rush into putting some wording and have some other problems. And I continue to have problems about when the Inspector General does investigations, is the information a public record? There's just a number of problems. So let's keep it going, and I am opposed to putting this matter on the ballot at this time.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Madam President, for that, and I see Mr. McCloof is here, so we'll just continue on. And I would have taken the over-under on the time for your oral argument, but I would have taken the over. Originally, when this concept was discussed, and I brought it up actually during the campaign in May of 2010, my intent was to always bring this forward as a charter amendment to memorialize and provide certain authorities to the Inspector General that aren't currently afforded, and they're outlined in here. Obviously, the creation of an independent agency, the confidential investigative files, the ability to subpoena, to do those types of investigative work that needs to be done. Also, there's language in here regarding the ability for the Inspector General to contract out with other entities. And in the state of Florida, which I believe it's done by state law, the Inspector General has the ability to contract for a fee with other entities to provide IG-related activities. This would also provide that. I understand the challenges and the concerns regarding the cost and how to determine what the right allocation is, but in order for the Inspector General to be independent, there must be a minimum securing of funding. Once again, the Florida law uses a percentage of the contracts entered into by the county because the IG presumably has the ability to investigate those contracts, with some exceptions. That provides a minimum level, and then if the IG needs additional funding, then the IG goes to the legislative body and requests that additional funding. So that's fundamentally how those structures are put together. And this ordinance somewhat engages those concepts in total. The amendment Mr. Schron, and I believe that Mr. McAleer is looking for, is much more broad in that it basically just creates the embodiment of an independent Inspector General with the funding sources and the other items to be determined by council at a later date, or to be determined by council, period. It advances the objective down the road without putting some of the restrictions that I believe council may be concerned with. Have we been able to identify that document yet?
We can pick up with.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, because we're still waiting for this item, and Mr. McCloof is here, and we've made no motions on this, just discussion. I guess we're still waiting for the prosecutor's office as well. I believe they wanted to be heard on this one. So why don't we?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Schron.
One of the things that we're doing here, I think we all have agreed we want to try to limit the number of charter changes that we have on the ballot, but there is a consistent thread, I think, of what there is at least some consensus on, and that is we came forward with changes that we think are needed, and most of them are all around the concept of independence. The sheriff changes that I believe that there seems to be a tone is based around an independence of that office. The personnel that we're looking at making that change is around the concept of codifying the independence component, and therefore I think it would behoove us, if we're going to have three big items, the independence of the IG would follow within that same theory or concept that we're trying to make sure we're putting those independent things into there, because we now realize that the sheriff has a risk of losing that independence unless we put this provision in there. The personnel changes is risk of losing it unless we put these in, and I believe the same thing potentially with the IG. I agree with Madam President that we can fill in some more of the details through an ordinance process, but to actually say, we want these three pieces of the independence actually being put in the charter, I think it actually, when we go out to the public, would say, these are why we want to see these in there. The drafters did the best job they could, they missed these components, and so it would be a common theme, at least, to put those three components as independent. So that's my thoughts.
Ms. Simon?
I just had some questions about I read it. So this is different from what you proposed way back when there was a formula in place, right? Which I never agreed with. So this is just a formula in the event the council votes to defund the office, right? So there's a ceiling that we can't go below.
I believe so, that's correct.
And Mr. Chairman, to Ms. Simon's comments, that's why I believe a shorter version is appropriate. You can fill it in through ordinance, those specific points, in case you have it changed later on. So you're not bound by charter as far as formulas or that can all be done through an ordinance on the operations of the IG policies and procedures.
Right, this is too much.
Okay, and we're trying to identify the proposed, Mr. Schron and I, and miscommunication, we each thought we were bringing the amendment. So I'll apologize for that. I'm just looking for Mr. McAleer if he's had an opportunity to identify it yet. Okay.
For Mr. McLaughlin, I'll get it at the break.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's do this, because, well, let's do this, because I'd like council to have a copy of that. Why don't we take a break till 11 o'clock? It looks like we're still waiting for the prosecutor. I see Ms. Platten is. Okay, why don't we take a break till 11 o'clock? In the interim, we'll have the opportunity for the amendment to be presented for this item, then we'll pick up this discussion, and then, correct, and then we'll move into the law director prosecutor item. So we'll take a break until 11 o'clock. Ready? All right, thank you. We'll come back. I appreciate everybody's patience. There was an amendment being drafted, and that's why we took an extra 17 minutes. It was Trevor's typing. But, so we'll continue with the Inspector General discussion, Resolution 2013-0164, and I believe that Mr. Sharon will be bringing forward an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been an amendment written in front of you. It is an amendment to replace all the language that appears in the proposed amendment of 0164. And what it does is it just says in a very short and sweet language that the county executive basically did create the concept of the IG. We created the ordinance to support it. This just says that the charter will adopt that, and it's in keeping, I'll go again with the Charter Review Commission, that the Inspector General become an independent body, and that the difference between what we currently have and what this is the charter will be fixed, creating the IG, whereas what we currently have in place, if a future group believes that the IG should go away, the ordinance can change and it can be going away. So what I'm proposing is the amendment as presented, that there shall be an agency of an Inspector General. The County Council shall establish by ordinance the powers and duties of that agency, the manner of the Inspector General's appointment, and the agency's funding to ensure that the independence in carrying out the powers and duties. That's my, as proposed.
Okay, that's to replace section 14.01, and I'll second that amendment. Is there now discussion on the amendment? Mr. Miller.
This certainly accomplishes the goal of brevity. The only question I would raise is in section 2, where it says shall Article 14, section 14.01 be added to establish the Inspector General and provide for its funding, structure, operations, and authority. Is that language still good, or would we need to say something like establish the agency and provide that the county council will provide for its funding structure? Maybe the law department can give us some advice on that.
Sure, to the councilman through the chair. We feel that this language adequately represents what this new proposed amendment does, but it is possible that if council felt that it should be clarified that council is the body that establishes the funding, structure, operations, powers, and duties of the Inspector General, it could do that. So, but we feel that this ballot language is adequate.
Is a fair representation. Yes. As is. Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure whether that was a compliment or a comment as far as brevity, but it seems to me it puts us in keeping with what we're trying to establish as far as an independent sheriff going on the ballot and to codify the independent IG. And I think it also does not affect the concepts to which our President Connolly was saying in regards to she's supportive of the IG, but the details can still be worked out through this kind of language. So we are not losing that ability to control the ordinance through ordinance, anything that would go forward.
Right, and I would support, as we heard in committee in 2011, from April till June, as we diligently went through and Ms. Simon was on that committee, and Mr. Brady Miller, President Connolly, we went through this concept and where we were and how to get at least to the concept of the creation of an independent Inspector General. Although this, I would prefer more specificity in this. This, at least based on the consensus I'm hearing, will move the discussion, create the independent agency itself, but at least in the interim, as we further define the roles as expressed by Council President Connolly of the Inspector General, we'll continue the discussion and we can bring up more specific language down the road for a future ballot. So I'm supportive of this. Any other comments? Simon?
Yes, I'm going to vote yes, because this is so brief, just to get it out of committee, but I share the concerns of Council President. So for today, this is something I can support, but I'd like to, consider the comments of the President.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, there's been a motion for an amendment.
Mr. Chair, I agree with the Council President on this one. And we have not had the first report yet, so I guess I will be in agreement to move it out of committee, but not so clear that we've defined everything that needs to be defined and what's the big rush on it. And that's my big thought.
Just as a point of clarification on the IG's report, we have received the reports every 6 months. It's been distributed to council, but the report itself has actually been explained in committee, not before the full council. So, and actually, to that point, we're attempting now to schedule the first semi-annual report meeting for sometime in August. We're just working that out as an aside.
But it hasn't went to the people yet. That's another thing. Go ahead.
It's on the website.
Mr. Chairman, the other aspect about this did, I think, come through the Charter Review Commission, that this was one of the key components that they saw as beneficial. It's been one from the county executive, and it's also been one from this council to have the independence of that IG. And why not say that this is at least a space holder to have that independence recorded in the charter? With details can always follow as far as by ordinance, as far as operation. But this way, it is not going to be removed by a future council. By ordinance, it would be put on the ballot for the whole county to approve.
All right, Mr. Miller, and then Mr. Germano.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to vote yes because I'm for continuing this discussion. But I share the concerns of the council president. I also, particularly because people are saying we shouldn't put too many things on the ballot, I don't know that I'd want to put something on the ballot with the idea that we might put something more definitive on the ballot in the future. You know, I think we should get to the point where we got a pretty good consensus that this is the ongoing language that we want in the charter on the subject. But I don't know that we're at the end of this process and want to keep it open. So it's yes for today, but more thinking before August 27th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Germano?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I agree with the brevity, except that the way this reads, the council shall establish by ordinance, and it almost sounds like, you know, it's once and done. I think there should be just a few more words talking about will establish and review and define, because this whole Inspector General role may be changing as we learn. So if there just be a couple more words, and I don't know what the words would be to craft the idea that we're establishing and review or refine, you know, the position. So I don't know what those carefully crafted words would be, but I think this is, by saying shall establish by ordinance, it's once and done, but it's more a continuing process.
Well, and just to that point, you know, the charter compels us or requires us to do certain things by ordinance, and we have since reviewed, you know, the ethics ordinance as an example, we have gone back and we did an annual review and consistently go back without the mandate in the charter that we do that, but we do it just as a course of action. I believe, to your point, I think we've already established a practice of doing that.
We may be able to do that, Mr. Chairman, just by changing ordinance to ordinances. By ordinances.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Simon?
that's not necessary.
Well,
We can do, once there's an ordinance, we can modify it, we're the one, that's what we're able to do, is to give us this latitude to figure out what, if anything, needs to change or what it needs to say, how it's operating, it's evolving. So I think ordinance is fine because we always can come back and modify it and amend it and substitute it.
Very good.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Miller?
There might need to be some language about there shall be an agency of an inspector general that shall have authority for investigation of waste, fraud, and abuse, or something like that that defines its basic purpose.
Okay. Well, is there an amendment to that effect? Is that what I'm hearing? Or, one of the things, I'll ask that question before I continue. Is there an amendment to add that language?
Well, I'd just like to say that this is making my point. We're not clear exactly what the office does. So why put some words in that somebody else can interpret? We can do this in a year, we can do it in 2 years, once we figure out the details. There's no rush on this. I like the Inspector General, I think it's a good office, but it's something that has to morph and come together till we get all the details together.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Miller?
I don't think we need to amend it today. I think if this comes together, there probably would be some further amendment before August 27th, and we can take time and think about it.
Okay, very
It's
good.
just a thought to think about.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we have not taken a vote on the amendment yet. All right, we'll take a vote on but the amendment's been made and seconded. There's been discussion on the amendment. We'll take a roll call vote on the amendment, which we all have in front of us. It's replacing in the ordinance section 14 under section 1, 14.01. Clerk, please call the roll on the amendment.
Calling the roll, Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Germana?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon? Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
And Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Okay, very
Motion
good.
carries.
Thank you. So the amendment has been made and seconded and duly voted on. Before us now is Resolution 2013-0164 as amended. Any discussion on the resolution? Hearing none. Motion's been made and seconded, Mr. Miller, so we don't need to go through that again, correct?
There has not been a motion
Not been a
for a
motion
first
yet.
and second for
Okay.
this merits.
All right, motion's been made by Mr. Schron, I'll second. Motion's made and seconded for Resolution 2013-0164 as amended. Now any discussion on the amended resolution? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll on Resolution 2013-0164 as amended? Roll call vote.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
And Ms. Conley?
No.
Motion carries.
Very good, thank you. The next item on the agenda is item C, which we've moved to the end of the agenda at the request of the law director. It's Resolution 2013-0160. If the clerk would please read the item into the agenda, into the record.
Resolution number 2013-0160, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga amendments to Article 4, Section 4.01, and Article 5, Section 5.06 of the Charter of Cuyahoga County, allocating legal duties between the county prosecutor and the director of law to clarify the responsibilities of each office, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Very good, thank you. This one, because we know of the sensitive nature of this item, I'm going to diverge a little bit from protocol that we've been operating under in the past, and start with the authors, Ms. Simon and Mr. Miller, discussing these two items. We have a number of documents in front of us. I'd like to discussion from the law department as well as the prosecutor's office on this item, and then we'll continue on from there. So we'll start with Ms. Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The language we have in front of us has been long in the works. This issue of the powers and duties of the law department and the prosecutor have been reviewed and discussed for almost 3 years now. And the reason for that is it's because it's extremely important that we define this. The charter as it was handed to us was not clear. And as a result of that, we have had some issues throughout the 3 years. But more than that, there's an inherent issues in the structure of how these two bodies function. I believe that what we have in front of us is a reasonable compromise. It's rational. It's an extension of this new government. It gives us the ability as the new government to have our own issues litigated by our own lawyers. That's really what this does. It leaves with the prosecutor the criminal side of things, and also all of the statutory boards and commissions and entities that the prosecutor represents now on a civil basis. And more than that, the quasi-criminal entities such as child support would stay with the prosecutor. So the lion's share stays with the prosecutor, but the small amount of cases that we would be handling within our own body would be able to stay with the law department. We're not anticipating a huge influx of lawyers into the law department. It would be a small amount to be able to handle the workload, and the details of that transfer would be worked out by this council in connection with our law department and the administration. I don't see that as being a big hurdle. And most importantly, this ordinance gives us, the council, the ability to retain and select our own outside counsel. And part of that process, we would be consistent with our contracting board that we work so hard to enact. We would go through that process of fairness to send this out and to get the best quotes, the best counsel, rather than having the prosecutor give a list or tell us who is going to be our counsel. This is the big change. This would allow us to select our own counsel, and we would do it consistent with the way we have any other contract in which we enter into with the county and a third-party entity. So I think this is reasonable, I think it's manageable, and I think it's necessary, and I hope council would consider this.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman and my colleagues, first I would commend to everybody's attention the 3-page memo from Majid, which sets out in very clear and non-technical language why this amendment is needed and what the rationale for it is. The first thing that I'd say is that things are currently broken. Section 401 and 5.06 of the Charter are in conflict with each other. Those sections give both the law director and the prosecutor the power to legally represent the executive and council using different language. This conflict is certain to cause serious problems and needs to be corrected. A memorandum of understanding could provide a temporary workaround, but with no guarantee of how long it would last, and it would not really fix the basic problem. The amendment before us is compromise language. Earlier concepts had the law department doing all the civil work and the prosecutor doing all the criminal work. This amendment limits the law department's civil role to the executive agencies and council. The prosecutor would represent all boards and commissions not directly under the executive, which includes some very large agencies. This is a fair, reasonable, and efficient allocation of duties. Creating unified executive authority in the county executive was one of the most important goals of the Charter. To deny the executive the power to control his or her own legal process regarding his or her own agencies is totally contrary to what the Charter is trying to do. The argument that this amendment allows an unelected person unlimited power to employ outside counsel is totally without merit. The law director works under the executive, has his or her budget reviewed by the council, and his or her contracts have to go through the appropriate approval process under our contracts and purchasing ordinance. And there are times when the council needs its own legal representation, such as on the headquarters building. This needs to be made clear in the charter, which this amendment does. If someone were to tell me that that I could only vote one amendment on the ballot this year, this is the one that I would vote for. It is a seriously broken section. It's certainly certain to cause us trouble in the future if not fixed, and we have the opportunity to do so, and this amendment will do so effectively, and I commend it to you for your consideration.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Mr. McClure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any prepared remarks or anything to that effect. I was not available this morning. I just wanted to be here to answer any questions that the council may have. But let me say this. I'm tired, honestly. How many more years are we going to come here and we have the prosecutor on one side and the law department on the other side, and we're trying to work through these issues? I genuinely, by all means, like these people. I want to be on the same table with them. I want to cooperate with them. We have to be together. Until this dispute is resolved, we will always have this friction unnecessarily. This amendment is very surgically tailored. It doesn't affect representation of the courts. It doesn't affect representation any of the independent boards. It doesn't affect any representation of the townships. It doesn't affect all the quasi-criminal work in the county, child support, any of that stuff. All it does is it says the executive, the council, and the agencies that report to the executive and the council would be within the law department. It removes the possibilities of conflict. It gives county council the ability, in situations which I agree are very well justified for county council, to obtain its own counsel. It gives the flexibility for that. And when you're talking about this being a major shift, we're really talking about 7-8 lawyers. That's all this fight is about. This is not something major. With respect to the retention of outside counsel, I saw the letter from Mr. Johnson and the memo that I addressed. All it is basically is the way I view it, in the very same way that the Department of Public Works, when they need an architect, they go through a process, and when they need to retain the architect, you go before the approval authority, be it the Contracts and Purchasing Board, Board of Control, or the County Council, and you have the approval. The body that makes the award is either the Board of Control, the Council, or the Contracts Purchasing Board, not the law director. The law director doesn't award any contract. I maintain the county executive doesn't award any contract under our contracting procedures. It's one of those boards who are the body that makes the award. That is how this would work. That's the way it is in municipalities. That's the way even if you're thinking of the Port Authority, you go before the board, and the board actually authorizes the retention of outside counsel. So I really view this as a surgically drafted amendment that clears this up, that resolves the issue, maintains the authority and historic authority of the prosecutor's office, leaves the civil division in the prosecutor's office, doesn't transfer the entirety of the civil division. We're simply talking about a few clients that would come into the law department and would remove this friction. Because when I say this, I honestly, I look at Tim McGinty, I look at Jane, I want to be at the same table with them, working together for the county's progress. And enough of this. And that's all I would say. I would suggest to make sure to address the issue raised by Mr. Johnson, I would probably add a sentence to the amendment that says, the retention of outside counsel shall be effectuated in accordance with the county's contracting procedures and approval processes as established by county council by ordinance pursuant to sections 9.033 and 9.034 to make it abundantly clear that the law director is not out there hiring outside counsel. The approval is through the normal county approval process. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. What we'll do is open up questions. We'll have Mr. McClure, there'll be questions from council, Mr. McGinty, or your designee from the prosecutor's office, then we'll have questions there, and then we'll continue the discussion this way. So there's a question, Mr. Gallagher.
Mr. McClure, surgically, we've opened up the patient. Now, how do we close it? Said 7 or 8. Is it 7 or 8?
That's the part, I don't know the number. It depends on how many the prosecutor needs for all the age. I mean, for instance, I give you an example. The court, I presume they need a significant number of lawyers to represent, because all these habeas corpus and all the, so they get a lot of, that is something to be worked. I'm trying to estimate based on the number of civil litigators. If you think of the percentage of the work that's coming there, it's 7 or 8. I can live with 7. If that's the number that you want, I can. It's not an issue.
It seems to me that if there, as you said, there's been friction and we go this way, 7 or 8, there's a big difference. And are we going into negotiations over 7 or 8? So I kind of want to close the patient there on that. Now, we've got 7 or 8, let's call it 7.5. They're prosecutors. Now what do they become? I mean, who picks them, and then who do they answer to, or do they have 2 masters?
No, they would be assistant law directors.
They would be assistant law directors, so they lose their status as prosecutor, prosecuting attorney, and become assistant law directors.
In the same way that you had employees in the clerk of courts that became under the fiscal officer under the charter, or that you had recorders that became under the fiscal officer, like the title division and the clerk of courts.
Well, I would argue this is a bigger step than that. And again, you know, I'm looking at trying to fix a problem and not create other problems. And then you have prosecutors who are at certain pay levels. What happens to their pay grade?
Let me be very clear. The reason why I say 7 or 8, I'm not trying to have any lawyers from the prosecutor's office move. I mean, we could do our own hiring. What that would do then is you would have the need that the prosecutor's office diminish, and then they would need layoffs. I'm trying to avoid any layoffs by saying you do the transfer, we will accept the employees, we'll embrace them fully, exactly in the, you know, what they're doing right now. Hopefully you would have equity across the county in terms of how much lawyers are paid. It shouldn't be, you know, if you're at a status level, you're in the prosecutor's office, in the law department, or wherever you are, you should be around that level. So that shouldn't be an issue. The reason why I say transfer is I'm trying to avoid layoffs.
Okay, Mr. Schron, and then Ms. Simon.
I appreciate the need to get at some point into the detail of numbers of 7 or 8 or whatever it happens to be, but I look upon this conversation as a philosophy that we were discussing here as to what the philosophical and then the instrumental and the functional part of where the responsibility falls out. I mean, once that is decided, then the next question is how do you fulfill the mission? And to me, that can we do it by using staff in another part of the organization is always what any organization should look to. But ultimately, if we've decided that we're making a philosophical and functional change, then the burden then becomes the law departments to actually how do you man it and how do you staff it up and how do you get the job done. And I hope that you would look to staff already currently within the county, but you might find that it is the wrong mix, that you have somebody that's got a skill or an expertise in an area and it's not transferable directly. So my support is to vote on whether the philosophy makes sense, and I'll let hopefully the two of you, if it should go forward, would work out the details of that.
And I agree with you 100%, Councilman. I would say also that we have this agreement, and it really the theatrics don't look right when you have them here. We actually, the relationship between the prosecutor and the executive and the law director is excellent. And quite frankly, if there's a time to do an amendment, it is now, because the relationship is excellent, that we can work through those issues. You know, there's the issue that we disagree on, and it's going to need a charter amendment to be resolved. But once that issue is resolved, we can work together to effectuate the transfer in the county's best interest to make sure that everything is protected, that nothing falls through the cracks. Thankfully, we'll have some time because the charter amendment, even if it passes, there's time for when it becomes effective. So we'll have plenty of time to plan to make sure that there is a smooth transition without any issues.
Simon?
No, I think these details will be worked out. This is, not something I think we need. What I think the body needs to fix is a structural deficit and how it impacts us. The details can work out. We know it's not going to be 100 people coming over here. We know what the range is, and it's reasonable, so.
Okay, very good. Mr. McClure, did you have anything else?
That's it. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. McGinty or whomever from the prosecutor's office?
Counsel, my name's Gary Johnson. Spoke to this issue before and received that letter. What this issue is doing is not resolving any questions. It's just creating more. I'm sorry. And the only where it even talks about the prosecutor is in the title. Doesn't say anything else. What you are electing here is a duplication of what exists right now, and you're putting it in the law director's office. Is that necessary? We've already heard during the conversation before this and other times, why are we speeding through? This is the most appropriate time. We have come to the table, we've sat down, we've talked to them. We don't get a response for 45 days until I address this body. We get a response. We are trying to work through this. And it's not just the prosecutor, it's not, Mr. Fitzgerald, it's not the law director. It's putting this charter into the structure of the state of Ohio. You are opening up a can of worms. And I don't mean that by any threat or anything else. The state law, and I know that it can say, and you've been told, we can do a charter and that can ignore things. It can do everything except contradict state law. And that's what it does in many fashions here. If you pass this, the only thing it says, and it's surgically crafted, but then we hear it needs to be amended because it's not surgically crafted, because it says the law director gets to appoint. Now, that might be under Section 309 or not. It doesn't say that. It's wrong. As you sit here, you say, well, it won't cost us any more money. The prosecutor's office is not just going to transfer everybody over and do that. Those people have jobs. They select who they want to work for. They select what they're going to do. Those things are not. You're going to end up with a duplication. You're going to end up with maybe cuts someplace, other issues. The prosecutor's office, they don't just work on one single aspect. They don't sit at their desk and wait for the next. They have multiple projects with multiple departments doing certain things for the civil document. So when you talk about creating efficiencies, creating organization, functionality, philosophy, this is the wrong way to do that. And, Ms. Simon, you may believe that ultimately that's where this all has to be, and Mr. Miller, but the point being is, this is not the way to do that. This will only lead to, either opposition of the charter, charter amendments. If I go back to what the charter group sat down and did, and they worked on this very, very hard. And in the beginning, they thought the same way. And they came full circle all the way back with the respect for the minority opinion that's here, and they voted on that. And they voted to put the language that way because they felt it has to be done in a manner of which was already started. We've sat down, we need to work out the details. There are logical things that certain part of the departments have to be. There are always going to be problems within any types of organizations that we're combining together, but you've even heard it from the law department's office, you've heard it from the prosecutor. It's worked fairly well. In fact, more than fairly well. And there are some issues with the council, that have come up recently that they would like to have somebody dedicated to them or like to have somebody more responsive to them. That can be done under the existing situation. Same thing with special prosecutors or special counsel being named. That can be done under this. All it has to be is the request. That's being done right now. But what you're doing right here is, if you read what the original section was, the law director shall be the legal advisor to and represent the county executive and county council. And that's not what this does. This opens up, basically the line is, the law director shall be responsible for the employment of outside counsel and the performance of his and her duties. That's the expansion of this. And what does that do? It creates duplication. It creates untold cost. I can't sit here and tell you whether it's $100 million or it's 50 cents, but it's going to cost more. And that's something that can't be done in a vacuum. It's got to be done logically in the discussions between people that are working with each other right now. And Mr. Gallagher's question with regard to 7 or 8, they're talking about that's half. There's 16 members of the civil division right now. We've just heard that the lion's share is going to end up back into that same department, but half of the department is being talked about being transferred or shifted or whatever else. So in terms of efficiencies and function, you're creating duplication. And there's not going to be any way to prevent that. And there always is some duplication when you go into changes, but this isn't the right way to do that. And you're taking the big picture, looking down, when that's not what this group should be doing, and that's not what we should be asking the voters of Cuyahoga County, because those are the people. You also have the problem is from the outside, not whether it's from the prosecutor or whether it's from the executive directors. Legally, are we going to be able to come into challenges with regard to the people that are representing our interest here in the county, representing the voters? It's going to happen because those are constitutional issues that are set and they are not decided. There's 2 or 3 cases that are out there right now that deal with the issue from Summit County, but they don't go all the way. And we've already heard, and the law director's office agrees with us, that the litigation function for purposes of the county is something that, as in fact, if you go back and look at the proposed under agreement that was sent by the law director last week to this body, you will see that it acknowledges they would have to be appointed, prosecutors in order for them to do litigation under state law. And that's why, once again, that's as it exists now. If we change the charter, does that erase that state? No one in this room, and there are much greater minds than my own here, can tell you that answer to that question. Even though we can all guess at what it is or subject ourselves to it, we don't know. So I'm asking, not for the time to be taken to get this right. If there is a reason for it to be pushed ahead, I haven't seen it. I attended a lot of the commission meetings that had testimony on this. I have listened to what's going on at the meeting of the whole with regard to this. No one's jumped with anything that the ball's been dropped. Have there been some issues? Yes, and there always will be, and there will be in the future, regardless what happens here. But I'm asking you not to create bigger issues, bigger opposition, and problems that are going to just continue to complicate the situation, because this doesn't define anything. It doesn't define it. All it does is allow the law director to appoint someone to go in and do litigation. Where does that separate any duties between anybody? It doesn't. So that's what we're dealing with here. It might be something that somebody is well-meaning, and I'm sure that they probably are, but it doesn't answer the question. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Simon?
I don't have any questions, but I have a comment, but I thought Councilman Miller did. Did you, or no?
Mr. Brady? Did you, Mr. Miller?
Yes. I just need, unless I'm interrupting somebody else's train of thought or their questioning, I need to be caught up on this a little bit. I've been on the fence on this issue for the last 2.5 years. In fact, I've been so much on the fence, I've been on both sides of the fence. We voted, initially for what came forward from the administration. That went, I believe, if I can remember correctly, to the Attorney General. And then as we took the issue up again, we had a new prosecutor running for office, had been nominated. And I was then reluctant to change the authority of that person, given the position that they were in being in front of the voters, for what office and for what duties. And so then I was on the other side of the fence. So now here we are again, and I understand why, because we have a charter commission, and this has come up and been discussed. But would somebody please bring me up to speed, because, and I don't know exactly who it would be, but it's got to be from people from both sides. I thought we were having discussions between the prosecutor's office and the executive's office in the effort to resolve this. So is that happening? Is it not happening? Why are we at,
I will answer yes. In the earlier part of this year, I was asked to represent the prosecutor's office in discussions with the law department and with the executive. And the executive, Fitzgerald, appointed Terry Keneally to do that with me. And Terry and I have had several meetings to do that. We provided a memorandum of understanding on June 6th. We didn't receive anything back until whatever happened last week, the agreement that was received from the law director last week. To our opinion, are there discussions going on? The answer is yes. Do we think that's where these belong? The answer is yes, because even if you take this and you pass this and the voters pass it, you're going to be right back to where we are right now making those determinations, because it doesn't give the specificity.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman?
I'm acting
as... Mr. Chairman. Okay, who's on first here?
But yes,
but Mr. Johnson, do you believe that these discussions are going to bear fruit?
I do, yes, and I think that
Do you have any sense for how long that would take?
I can't say at this point in time, but if you put us in the room and tell us to get that done, I think it's weeks. If it drags on, it could be months. But I think that's where this needs to be done. And then it needs to be presented to this group. And it needs to be done in a fashion that deals with the specifics. This does not get into the specifics, and I don't think you can put those specifics before. Mr. Sharon doesn't take a vote at everything that gets done at his company. You don't micromanage things, but you get that philosophy, that functionality. Those are the things you have to do. This doesn't take that into consideration. And all this does right now is authorize, the executive to hire other people without mention of really the prosecutor's office. And then there's the whole other legal challenges that go in with that. You mentioned the Attorney General's opinion. If you go back and read the advisory, which both sides agreed to submit and go through his decision, he made a decision. That was not turned down by the prosecutor's office. We went back to further talks as a result of that. So that's where we are today. And it takes two to tango and two to come up with it. I think if both people express good faith, that'll happen.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up to that then,
Sure.
And thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. I need, I guess I need the law director to respond to this, because to me, this is at the center of at least my ability to try to make a decision here.
Yeah, and I would just say it's been a question of what the goalpost is, in the sense of we were very optimistic when the new prosecutor came in, and we're always optimistic with Prosecutor McGinty. But what happened is the executive had agreed to these negotiations, and we thought that the outlying parameters, everybody is on the same page. That discussion, the question that is in front of you, we thought that issue is pretty much resolved. The negotiations were going to answer the mechanics of how we get there. I can tell you this much: the memorandum of understanding that we received from the prosecutor's office, if we were to give our equivalent of that memorandum, it would be that the prosecutor would be appointed by the executive, or would be almost. My point is, we came at the negotiations thinking we thought the parameters were pretty much resolved. This is what we need. Addressed it from the point of this is what we really need, and then the response that we got was so far on the other end, and you're almost trying to now bridge the goalpost to somewhere in between. If this is how the negotiations would have proceeded, we would have started here. We started thinking that these were going to proceed on exactly, these are the county's needs. I see this as an operational issue. I see it as an issue of efficiency. I actually would submit that it will actually result in savings because it will avoid duplication of needing lawyers on the law departments monitoring and going over what the prosecutors are. Now you need a double set of lawyers doing the very same thing. That will actually avoid all that duplication because the people who are actually finally making the decision will be involved in the matter from the very beginning to the very end. So that's where I would love to reach a resolution. But I'm being very frank with the council. I'm saying it as your own lawyer. I'm reaching my own level of. I don't see the negotiations being on a trajectory for a resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. Maloof, as our own lawyer, then, have you reached the conclusion that these negotiations are not going to bear fruit?
And these are based precisely on the proceedings that have happened before the Charter Review Commission. What exactly I have heard from Mr. Johnson, what I've heard when Ms. Planton testified before the Charter Review Commission, that they don't want to give up on the litigation. So, I mean, we keep talking about roadmaps to an end and the resolution, but if that ultimate question, the prosecutor is saying, I'm not going to have the law department do litigation, so what are we talking about? I mean, what are these discussions leading to?
So you believe the discussions have led to that you're at the end of the
almost,
point.
it's become the process.
You're saying you're at the end of the point of this negotiation. You've reached an impasse.
I'm saying the negotiations have become about the process, and we forgot that we need to reach an end. The process need to reach a conclusion.
I don't want to drag this out, but this is, to me, what it's all about. Mr. Johnson, do you have any?
Well, the only thing I'd say is,
Chairman,
notice,
Mr. Johnson.
excuse me, you'll notice we gave you a copy of what we submitted to him. Now, that was after we had several meetings, and once again, Terry Keneally still thinks he's negotiating with me. I mean, we were waiting for a response from them. That was a working document. You know, for example, when I helped Mr. Schron on the other side when he bought his property in Collinwood Yards. They started out with something on this side. We started out with this. We negotiated. We met in the middle. We got it done. We got it accomplished. That's what negotiations are for. It's not we're going to sit back and see. Did we have it more our way maybe in that than their way? Absolutely. But you get a response. The only thing we ever got from them in writing up until last week was something that talked about the city law department and suggestions that were made in that. And that was given to me by Mr. Keneally. It wasn't an agreement, wasn't anything as thorough as what the law director did. And so we said, okay, we'll come back and make that. We did that. And we said, this is a working document. Take it back. Tell us where we're wrong. Tell us where you need things. Up until I heard last week that they didn't think negotiations were going well, that was a surprise to me. And did I act surprised? I was, because that's where we think this has to be. We're grown-ups. We know we're not going to get everything. And once again, it's not about what we or they get. It's about what the county voters get. What's efficient? What's functional? What should be done? What should be done under state law? Who has the rights to do it? All those things have to be put into consideration. That's what we're trying to do. This only extends that argument. That's all this, I mean, once again, I understand people may think it's more functional if everything's in one box, but you know, for example, we'll take an example. You have a department that has somebody advising it. They sit on that committee and they say, we're going to have to sue this person. Why they're going to sue them? So that person is going to learn litigation, or they're going to have to get somebody else in that department who does litigation all the time. Why is there a prosecutor's office? Because they handle litigation for multi-departments. They don't sit there. Litigation shouldn't and doesn't happen all the time. It's not what you should be doing, but you need to have the right people doing it. I'm sure that they would hire very efficient litigators to do that. Hopefully, though, they're not going to be doing that much litigation. If you don't do it very well, it's like playing golf, you don't get very good at it. You know, Mr. Schron, sorry for picking on you, but when you go out and you get sued by somebody over some product that broke, you usually don't run down the hallway, you get your first opinion, but you go hire somebody that does it all the time. And that's what we're talking about here. And that's why this has been set up for a long, long time. It has stood the test of time, and I know we're in a mode that we had problems, we got to change, but you know what? You don't make change just for change. You do it so that it's functional and it's operational and it's going to save taxpayer money. This does not.
Mr. Chair.
Hold on a minute, please.
I'm fine.
Mr. Brady, you're done. Mr. Miller, then Ms. Simon. I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, Mr. Schron, then Ms. Simon.
I'll defer to Councilman Tron.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Seeing how I got the subject of a couple of discussions, as somebody who did try a number of cases and litigate a lot of material, and when I do go outside on a matter, the person who works up and does the depositions and who does all of the preliminary and all the background is the person, in my own particular case, was the one that was in the court. And it's, at least my understanding is that we're having those conversations with the situation and the facts and the gathering and information over in the law department, and then we're flipping it over to litigate someplace else. At least my understanding is the workup, a big portion of the communications and workup was being done on one side and being flipped over. Is that not correct?
No, it doesn't work anyway. I mean, just like, for example, let's say a product of yours it breaks and somebody sues you. Who handles that at your business? Whoever. Never happens, sorry. But the person who's in charge of that in manufacturing or whatever would lead the way to gather those facts. Then where do they go? To a lawyer. Is that what happens with the county here? Absolutely.
No, but the litigator, at least in my experience having tried cases, if I'm talking to the witness and I'm doing the depositions, I'm also going to be the one that's going to probably run the trial when I did it, and the same thing with I think we got sued once, and the litigator was the one who did the depositions and did everything and took it all the way through.
This doesn't change that, though. It doesn't change anything right now. Right now, the litigator does that because the litigator is the only one that can take the deposition. The litigator is the only one that can go in front of the judge.
But there's more to the background. My impression was the background was already in the executive's office, and then we're educating.
Not necessarily. Sometimes it is. If they've worked up a problem, perhaps, or they've tried to resolve it, that could be. Those people aren't cut out of the process. They're included in the process. In fact, if you look at the memorandum of understanding, we used a bad term. We said second chair. We want those people there. Those are people that are going to work hand in hand with the litigator. The problem is that person, if everything coming out of that department ends up in litigation, that's not a good person there because you shouldn't have all those problems. But what you want is the litigator you can go to. And that was probably something that they would adopt over time because litigation comes and goes. That's what we have now. That's why 88 of the counties have exactly the same thing. The litigation gets done by it. It doesn't mean that they have to be we or them. It doesn't have to mean they're all under one roof. Prosecutor has people in other offices. The law directors probably will end up having people in other offices where it's functional. Those are the diagrams on how things work and how they are most effectively handled. And that's what has to be done here. This doesn't do that.
Okay, well, I understand you disagree with that. To Mr. Brady's point, in that you asked both of you whether or not there was any progress being made. Just not to put words in your mouth, because I sometimes get accused of doing that, but if this body were to vote this out today, we have till the 27th to decide whether or not it actually goes on the ballot. It would definitely put pressure on both sides to have effective communication between now and the 27th on whatever these conversations are as we go forward. To vote it out, I think it's 27th is the day. So that puts both sides under a lot of suggested pressure to make sure you get something done that's effective. And if it can't be done, then we still have the ability to this body to make a decision. Is that it would?
And I understand it. And
would you have any problem with
no? And in fact, we've even said if we're not successful, we'll even go to an arbitration on it.
Well, I mean, but we don't have that.
I understand. We don't. Have the
once we get to the 27th, we don't have that option. So
But the point I make is, why put yourself in that situation as a body here? And all due respect, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and yes, we can sit down to try to do that. But there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. And
find the solutions between now and the 27th as a group, and and you take that burden off of us, because we have to vote one way or the other. 8 of us have to decide whether this goes forward or doesn't go forward. Let me ask then another question. Let's assume that this body decides that we want to disagree with your position and put this on the ballot. What will be the prosecutor's response to that language? Will you oppose it, or will you support it?
Well,
at that point in
first of
time?
all, I'd have to ask the prosecutor himself that would make that decision, but with the way it is worded here right now, you're going to have legal problems with it to start with, even before the prosecutor takes any position at all. And I, once again, because it's all untried and untested area out there. And would they oppose it? I think the answer would be yes.
Well, we're making a series of decisions to put a whole series of charter fixes, and whether you disagree or agree, we just want to know where you guys would be on that position. And I'm not asking you to speak for the prosecutor in that respect. I just wanted to ask a tough question.
I'm sorry, Mr. McGinney, could just come to the microphone, please. We have it on the record.
I can assure you, Councilman, that we will oppose it 100% vigorously, and we'll win by law. I mean, we saw the Attorney General's opinion. There's no if and buts about it. All the legal issues are on our side. We're willing to compromise this. We've offered in this letter from Mr. Johnson to arbitration, basically binding. We agree with Judge Conley's position that this should be worked out. We've been willing to compromise. No one was showing up on the other side. We've been anxious to settle this. Under Ohio law, I'm the elected attorney for the Cuyahoga County. People have elected me their prosecutor. The proposal that you have advanced will be a very expensive proposal, which is what I would argue if it came down to a political issue involved.
What does that mean?
You end up appointing counsel. Counsel ends up appointing attorneys. The prosecutor isn't going to take up every lawsuit that any council member wants. If counsel is deciding who to sue, who not to sue, who to appoint, and has their own lawyers, and there's no separation, you're going to have a lot more litigation. You're going to have a lot more cost. It's going to be very expensive. As a prosecutor now, I'm not going to file a lawsuit every time a councilman wants one if there isn't a good chance of winning or a good need to have it. As to the representation of the law director, or whoever the next law director is going to be, we welcome their participation. We've said they can sit second chair. We want their participation. We've sent people over. We're willing to make any compromise, but we can't negotiate with ourselves. Nobody showed up at the meetings. We're willing to arbitrate it. We're willing to put in an arbitrator and arbitrate it out. We put that in writing. We are anxious for an agreement to resolve this issue. We are confident that A, the voters would not vote this in. B, if they did, we're very confident. All you have to do is read the memorandum in the law. We'd win in court that any amendment that was voted in would be unconstitutional. You can't overrule the Ohio Constitution with an amendment, with a charter.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, hold on.
On that point.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So I don't want a big battle.
Sure.
It'd be a lot of energy wasted, time, effort wasted. We want to negotiate it out.
Sure.
And we've offered arbitration. It's right in this letter. Arbitrate it and we'll live with it.
Okay, Mr. McGinney, Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman.
And then Ms. Simon.
The Ohio Constitution that sets forth the way that the county can establish charters is very clear in the matter that that we can allocate the duties of the various officials as we see fit, as long as we provide for all of the duties that the state requires counties to do, that somebody perform them. This language is clearly constitutional, and I don't know why you folks who are attorneys and know better keep saying otherwise.
Well, we're listening to the Attorney General.
But the Attorney General's opinion referred to something that Summit County tried to do by statute. It did not refer to a charter amendment.
The Attorney General on this county, not
Oh, wait,
just the
Mr.
Summit
McGinney,
County.
I'm sorry. Let me, if you would, I'd rather, just from a protocol standpoint, Councilman finish with his comments, and then when he's done, then I'll allow you an
Okay,
opportunity to respond.
The Attorney General's opinion clearly suggested that his ruling was related to what Summit County tried to do by ordinance, and suggested that if they wanted to do differently, they could change their charter. We recognize that what the Ohio law says and the current charter language on the power of the prosecutor tracks that language. And that's what we're proposing to modify a little bit, so that the executive can control the litigation for his own agencies. That's all we're trying to do.
Very good.
And we have the right to do that.
Okay, Mr. McGinney, I'll allow you to respond then, Ms.
Thank you.
Simon.
The Attorney General, Ohio law, and the Ohio Constitution would suggest that as the attorney, the attorney for the county, we will not necessarily, we act as a buffer to propose litigation from a executive or council. We decide if litigation really is necessary. We won't accept all litigation. We will try to work as attorneys should. We're elected separately to be that buffer. That's what the Ohio Attorney General has talked about. That's what the Ohio Prosecutors Association has talked about. They will all vigorously oppose this with us. I don't want to go there, though. Okay. I would rather just work out an amiable agreement. The law director has agreed that in order, by Ohio law, in order to represent the county to be the litigator, you have to be an assistant prosecutor. He wants me to appoint his people to be assistant prosecutors. That's his proposal. That's an acknowledgement. You have to be an assistant prosecutor to be the litigator on a case. That's what Ohio law is. I understand that. And I want counsel to be happy with their counsel. I want them, it doesn't matter to me where they're stationed. We use some of our excellent counsel now to spend their time with the law director's office. We're open to any suggestion as to who counsel should be. I have opposed no outside counsel request, whatever agency has been chosen or whether the executive wanted since my arrival. I have no problem, and that's going to be continue to be the policy. We'll put it in writing, as long as there isn't a political conflict or something that would backfire on the county that wouldn't look right. And there's been no such proposal from the executive. We're going to let the agency or the council pick out who they'd like for outside counsel. That hasn't been a problem. I don't anticipate it being a problem. And we're willing to put it all in writing. We're willing to arbitrate it. Why not solve this now rather than go through all these issues? We need somebody to come to the table seriously and do it. They haven't offered to arbitrate. Their offers haven't been serious, and they don't even show up. So how are we going to negotiate?
Mr. Chair.
I'm going to allow Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon?
Address several things. First of all, with regard to this memorandum of understanding and the negotiations, it's not true that they're not showing up. The fundamental issue is that the prosecutor's office is unwilling to give up its litigation to allow our own county government to have its own lawyer, and that's the issue. If you're not willing to do that, this is an impasse. So arbitration's not going to work, further discussion's not going to work. That's a fundamental disagreement, and it's the position from you, the prosecutor, that somehow this is illegal for us to be able to handle our own litigation. It's not illegal. The Attorney General clearly states we can change this charter should we choose to allow that to happen. This is a very small piece of the office. When I said lion's share, it meant that you still have the criminal and the civil. So I don't understand why the prosecutor's office is hanging on to this with all of its life. This is what we're able to do as a charter government. The comparison to 88 counties is not legitimate because 88 counties don't have charter governments. This is legal, this is rational, and it makes sense. What doesn't make sense to me is why this office continues to hold on to this for dear life. This is a small piece of the office. This is a big issue for us to have some self-autonomy, to choose our own lawyers, to be able to litigate our own cases, so we don't have to duplicate efforts. Once we come to the point of litigation, we have to turn it over to the prosecutors. Most clients choose what they want to do. It's not up to the prosecutor to tell us we can't have a MERS action. We can't collect recording fees that are out there for millions of dollars, and the prosecutor is telling us that they don't want to litigate something that we want to litigate. That's the basis of an attorney-client relationship. It's the client chooses. The fact that the prosecutor has let us pick our own lawyers now, that's because of your benevolence in this regard. But not every prosecutor has given us that ability to choose our own counsel. There's no reason why we can't. So this memorandum, that's great if negotiations continue, but that's not going to change the future of this structure, and it's because you're not willing to give up the litigation. So the fundamental issue cannot be resolved there. So we keep talking about negotiations. Maybe they can work out details, but that's not what we need here. We have the ability to have a charter amendment. That's the only way to clarify this structural dispute, and we are able to do it. This is the right way to do it. The other way is just muddying the water. We can go back and forth all day, but the fundamental issue is you don't want to give up litigation in these small areas. And you can say it's illegal, and you can say it's expensive, and you can say you're going to sue us. That's fear-mongering. We were able to usher in a new government, 11 of us. We were able to do that, and we did it with discussion, we did it rationally, and we can do the same thing here, that the earth will not end if we, as this council and the executive, will be able to have our own lawyers and litigate our own cases. That's all we're asking. And what's different, Mr. Johnson, is that we will have a contracting purchasing board that will able to field contracts and be able to go through a process, a fair process, giving everybody the ability to apply to be the lawyers in our county government. So that's what's different. And we can pick our own lawyers. So when you say there's no difference, there's a big difference. So that's my statement. And I think this is something we need to do now because this is a charter issue. It's not a negotiation issue.
I'll give you an opportunity to respond. Mr. Germano, though, has a question.
Actually, I don't have a question. I've got an opinion. And unfortunately, I was a little taken back with the comment that the prosecutor is going to decide what we're going to litigate and what we're not going to litigate. In my way of thinking, a corporation, a business, a family, if they need an attorney, they hire an attorney to represent them. But the attorney doesn't tell the corporation or the family, well, I'm going to tell you what we're litigating and what you're going to not litigate. That is crazy. Legal counsel is legal counsel for a client. And in this case, the client is Cuyahoga County. If I could go back to my experience as a council president in the city of Parma for 19 years, and believe me, Parma had numerous litigation over those 19 years, both in federal court and local and zoning and all kinds of issues. And I can tell you that going into executive session, the law director, who was also chief prosecutor in charge, would go into executive session, and they would, when they couldn't litigate things themselves, they would make a recommendation to council, and in those executive sessions, they would say that the reason we're picking this council is that they're the best litigants, they're the most professional in this area of law, and then the council would go out and adopt it. And I just can't. I'm kind of like Councilman Brady. I can't understand. This seems like, all of a sudden, almost in divorce, you get two attorneys, and now the attorneys are fighting, and there's so many cases where it's getting out of control where they're fighting under the cause, but sometimes the couples could just get together and settle the differences without attorneys. I wish that this thing would have been resolved. And the county of Cuyahoga County and its charter government is the client. And our legal representation shouldn't be telling us what we're going to litigate and not litigate. That I found offensive.
All right, thank you. Well, Mr. Johnson, then we'll get to Ms. Conley. But let me just make a statement. I mean, obviously, we want to be able to foster communication and information, but I'd like us not to be repetitive in our comments. So if I feel as if there's repetitiveness,
Please cut me off.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Once again, and maybe I'll start, I'd like to respond to Ms. Simons. When the statement's made, it's the people we all represent, whether it's prosecutor or it's counsel. When you say that, we just make a decision, that's not going to change under this proposal that you have here. The lawyers always counsel their clients, whether it be counsel, whether it be a department, whether it be a divorce, and they counsel them in the fashion that, yes, you should litigate this. No, you shouldn't litigate this. If you're going to be, if you can't win, or if there's reasons why not, which I may not understand as a client, that's what my lawyer should be telling me to do. The best lawyer is the lawyer not saying, yeah, go sue them. Anybody can do that. The best lawyers are the ones that get things done, either get it negotiated, get it done otherwise, or get it completed. And that's what that comment is about. It's the protecting. We live in a litigious society, and eradicating more lawsuits is better than having more. And I'm sure the law department would agree with me wholeheartedly in that. And I'm sure they've told people in their capacity, this isn't something to litigate about. Either you're going to lose, it's not going to be good. And to go back to Ms. Simons, I understand your frustration about picking whoever you're going to want. There's nothing under the present situation that doesn't allow you to do that right now if you want a special counsel. If you have the law department representing the counsel, or you have the prosecutor's office, or in the county in general, you're still going to have to go to that pool of people once again who you're selecting. It's not that this counsel is going to be hiring individual lawyers within that department or within the other department. And once again, that option is even available to you now to make those suggestions. And once again, I know that you've had experienced something about a MERS. I don't know what that is, and I can't respond to it. But at that point in time, if this council decided that you wanted to go forward to that and a special prosecutor could have been named, a request could have been made. I don't know if it was or not.
Can I address that? Can I address that, Mr. Chair? I just want to address that.
I would, yeah, you have an opportunity to respond. I don't want us to get into this.
And I won't, because
But Ms. Simon, you brought it up, and I want the councilwoman to have an opportunity to respond.
I won't do this, but we have to go through the prosecutor's office and have judge approval. That hasn't been brought up. We have a 3-step process to get our own counsel, and we have to go through to you, then we need court approval, then it needs to come back. So we can't choose whoever we want. It has to go through two people, two entities. So that, I want to be very clear about that. The court's involved, and that's not been talked about today. We have to get court approval to get our own counsel.
But has that ever been objected? Has there ever been a problem with that, Ms. Simon? I'm sorry.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I believe the merits of both sides on this issue have properly been vetted. If there's no other point that has not been discussed here, I'll make a motion to move this item forward. Mr. Gallagher?
Quickly. Say we move this forward and it goes to the ballot and it's passed. Is there the possibility, and you're talking about problems down the road, an issue comes up where our law director is preparing to file a lawsuit and the prosecutor jumps in and files it before him stating, hey, I have every standing to do this. and then the law director files, now we have 2 lawsuits representing the case. Could that happen?
Well, put it this way, under this proposal, there's nothing to prevent that from happening. I would hope that cooler minds would prevail, because once again, it's the people that we're trying to represent here. But under this, absolutely that could happen. There's no division of labor. And to the other point before, is some part of this, since it doesn't provide any division of labor and say, now, we've heard comments about what we think this says, but it doesn't say that here in terms of who represents what. So once again, you get into that problem. There may be a solution, but this isn't the one.
Okay, and finally, and I'll let the chairman do what he wishes. And I'm a firm believer that you exhaust all efforts in every area. And you have on the table and in writing binding arbitration. Are we against that?
Mr. McClure.
I would just say this. I mean, that's a load. What are we arbitrating? So what question are we submitting to the arbitrator? Are we submitting the question of what does the charter mean to the arbitrator? Are we submitting the question of come up with a framework, regardless of what the charter says, ignore it. Come up with a framework that works for the county? That's a very different question. So it really depends, what are we arbitrating? But number 3, the whole idea, you go into a charter form of government, is you can choose your own destiny. We are trying to come up with a system that works. I can't overemphasize this. This issue for me is not about personalities. This is an operational core issue. So you outsource your destiny to an arbitrator and say, you decide it for me. And they come back with an answer that's not that comes back and burdens the system even more. What do we do then? So
well, if you go to binding arbitration, you live with it.
You could live with it. That's what I'm trying to say.
And I keep hearing here's my frustration. I keep hearing from both sides. We're trying to work on this. This guy won't show up, and we put this offer on the table, and I'm getting to the point where I'm almost not believing any of this. So what is it? And it almost goes to the audit question. What are you scared of if you have a good position? If you have binding arbitration?
Let me say this with respect to the negotiations. You've heard something being referred to today. So if you want any evidence of good faith negotiations, you've just heard it today. Our position, reading the current language of the charter, because the charter doesn't say that the law director is the advisor and representative of the county executive, and representative includes, by definition, if you go to the Ohio Code of Professional Conduct, the duties of a lawyer, representation is representation in court. But it was my understanding that Prosecutor McGinty believed that this is a power that the prosecutor has, and that's a power that he can bestow upon the law department. So that was made as a concession, saying, I don't care about this is not about, I don't care if every person files a pleading says by authorization of the prosecutor. This is not about how we get there. What I care about is the system that works at the very end. So that was made as a suggestion, honestly believing that that's what he was originally proposing as a concession. So, and now it's being used as if it's a concession, as if it's an admission by the law department about legal matters. So all those things were being made as good faith negotiations to get to the end, to get to the outcome, because at the very end, all I need is a system that works, that operational, that serves the county's interests and works efficiently. How we get there, whether we do it by authorization of the prosecutor, whether we do it by charter amendment, I just need a system to get there.
Well, I know how we're not getting there. We're not getting there by you two either showing up or not showing up, or it doesn't seem to me that there was a true negotiation here, and I don't know who's to blame. But I do understand that we have an interesting point, and I didn't realize this, that you have to be a county prosecutor to litigate. Do you agree with that?
No, I think you can do it under the charter. That's my point. I made that as, I'm saying I'm not going to even argue with you about these issues. I'll give it to you. Fine.
Mr.
We'll
Chair.
do it by your authority. What I care about is the ultimate outcome.
Mr. Chair, if I please give me latitude. This is getting so muddy that I can't even begin to articulate how frustrated I am. The negotiation was about transferring a prosecutor here because as we sit here today under current law, yes, it would have to be a current prosecutor, but we're changing the charter. I don't understand why this council would abdicate that to a third party to decide our future. Every other charter amendment, we're not sending the IG to an arbitrator. We're not sending an auditor, the clerk of courts to an arbitrator. Why would we do this? This is us. It's 11 of us. We determine our future. They haven't worked it out. Why should we even give them that authority? I don't even have words for this. I mean, why don't we send everything to arbitration? This is no different than the clerk audit, Councilman. I'm not going to address anybody in particular, but why aren't we sending everything to arbitration then? This is our charter duty. We're figuring out our fate.
And Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that. My only concern, I'm leaving it with this, is the only reason the arbitration came up is because it was put on the table and one party stepped away from it. And that's my question as to why one party, if we have good faith negotiations on both sides and they can't seem to agree, and one side says, then let's go to an arbitrator. I've got nothing to hide, and the other side steps away and doesn't go there. I need to know why we don't go there. And your answer to me is, I don't know what we're arbitrating.
I want to answer
Let me,
too.
If I may, just one second. I'm
on the council.
No, I'm not arguing this point. I'm going somewhere completely different.
All right,
Just a
But
point of clarification.
go someplace different than Madam President and Mr. Brady.
Yes.
Mr. Miller. So, Mr. McClure, just
The
briefly
only
make
point
your
of
point.
clarification I wanted to make is if you look to the charter amendment that is endorsed by the prosecutor's office, and if you look to the charter amendment that was put forth by Councilman Miller and Councilman Simon, they are almost identical. And they are taken out of the Ohio Revised Code that provides an alternative form of government. You have a law director that represents the county in all proceedings. The only difference is when that language was borrowed out of the Ohio Revised Code to be placed into the charter amendment, what happened is it was revised from the Ohio Revised Code to add an exception that says except upon the filing of any proceeding in court. That's the one that was endorsed by the prosecutor that the council turned down. The proposal that's submitted by Councilman Miller stays to the letter of the Ohio Revised Code.
Okay, Madam President?
Then
Mr. Brady?
I think that you all know my continuing concern about amending our charter, I don't want to say willy-nilly, but when you change a charter, it's like changing the Constitution, and you have long-term consequences. In this case, we know we have a problem with the law department, and I was very hopeful when we entered in these negotiations. I believe that this matter should be solved by a memorandum of understanding, that they decide prosecutor does this, law director does this, counsel against their counsel, and then when we get that framework established, then we can go with the charter amendment. If you put a charter amendment on, Mr. Miller says, oh, there won't be any lawsuits. We are buying litigation here. We are buying complications for a court to interpret some of these things later. Somebody comes up and says, this case is void because this person had no right to represent me. We have all kinds of legal problems here. I would just hope that I would even be willing to move this forward so that between now and, like Mr. Schrein, 27th, that these parties could get together. Now, my understanding is Mr. Keneally, who was appointed by Mr. Fitzgerald, has never showed up. Why can't we have Mr. Zimmerman, who was going to be here but was tied up, who is representing the council's interests? I don't understand why these parties can't get together. They're all reasonable, very, very intelligent lawyers. Why can't they work this out? Once again, if they work out a memorandum of understanding, it works for a year, then we can put it on the ballot.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brady, then Mr. Miller.
Yes. Just briefly. Part of my indecision about this is I've heard several council people who are passionate about this give very convincing arguments on both sides of this issue. I think that Councilwoman Simon and Councilman Miller make a extremely compelling argument that we have the authority to do this. That is to say, by charter change. What it doesn't get at is whether we want to do this, even if we could. That's a decision I haven't made yet. And what I don't want to see is a big battle between the prosecutor and the county council this fall or any other time. That's what I don't want to see. I want to avoid that. I don't see why we would let that happen. But I do agree with the council president and with Councilman Schron that I'll be willing to move this thing forward and try to get something going here and get a discussion going here. But there will be a point at which I'm willing to fish and cut bait or fish as well, and that may not be till next year. But if people are willing to move this forward in order to put this thing in a pressure cooker and try to get some kind of movement on both sides, then I'm willing to support moving it forward.
Very good, Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman, I would just remind everybody that sections 4.01 and 4.06 of the current charter are in conflict with each other, and a memorandum of understanding can't fix that. It could maybe find a way to kind of, by agreement, to look the other way on some things, work around it for a while, but it can't fix it. I would also say I withdraw my statement that there can't be litigation. There can always be litigation, but I don't think we should let the fear of litigation nor the threat to publicly oppose an amendment. If we let things like that stop us from doing what we think is right, I don't think we should. So that's it.
Great. One more comment from Ms. Simon, then Mr. McGee.
Okay.
I just want to say I agree. This is a charter defect. This is the way you fix a charter defect. There's no way to fix it with a memorandum. And there's a fundamental issue with, I'm not going to repeat everything, but it's not about right or wrong, Mr. Gallagher, about being afraid of an arbitrator's decision. It's about us deciding how we want to proceed as a charter government and what's best for our county council and the administration. It's not right or wrong. It's how do we wish to proceed to fix the defect.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McGinney.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Attorney General of the State of Ohio reviewed the Ohio law, reviewed the Ohio Constitution, reviewed the charter, and concluded that the people of the county elect their attorney. They elect an independent attorney. It's a different concept than you electing, or you or I choosing our own personal attorney. There is an attorney for the county, and the attorney is elected. And he concluded that the Cuyahoga County Prosecuting Attorney, rather than the Cuyahoga County Director of Law, is responsible for prosecuting or defending civil lawsuits or administrative actions in which the county executive or county council is a party. It goes on. It again is the prosecutor responsible for defending these civil lawsuits in various situations. Now, I'm willing to compromise that. I am willing to compromise with Ohio law, and the Attorney General says we're willing to go into an arbitration regarding it. Because you do have Article 5, which the Attorney General reviewed, which says that the law director shall be the legal advisor and representative to the county council and county and executive. We're willing to compromise. We have to, and we're willing to go to an arbitration regarding it. We're willing to negotiate it. We're willing to find a formula that works. We have to have the other side there. We're going to be there. If they'll show up, if they'll negotiate, we'll negotiate. I want to have an agreement on this. That's all. We're not, this is simply, we want to do something that's within the Constitution and can be done, and we don't have a duplication. I call it the $100 million error if this would be passed. That would be my campaign. I would explain it and how eventually this would cost litigation costs and duplication costs, an enormous amount of money over the many years that would follow. But it would be a very interesting campaign. And if I lost, I'd still win in court. So I'm confident either way. But nonetheless, I want to compromise, arbitrate it, and reach an agreement. And we're there and we're ready to go.
All right,
Thank you.
All right, we're at the point, I'm going to call this item for a vote. Just reminding everyone that just because we've possibly move it out of committee today doesn't mean the item will be placed on the ballot. It will need to be voted on the 27th of August for final. Okay. So I'll make a motion that resolution 2013-0160 be referred to council for second reading on the August 13th.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
were you going to do with the proposed substitute or not?
Well,
Just, okay.
I didn't hear anyone bring that forward. Is that correct? I don't know who the author, Simon and Miller, are you bringing this forward or no?
Hold on a minute.
I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I can move so it's clarified. I can make a motion that we substitute add the language.
And there's still an opportunity at the 13th and 27th meetings to propose them.
Wait, I'd prefer, we've been here long enough, but yeah, I probably in writing will propose to include the contracting board
okay,
language,
makes sense.
just so it's clear that this is not a unilateral decision by anybody, but our contracting board. So
All right, very
I'll
good.
bring that forward later.
So there's no amendment. So there's a motion to move resolution 2013-0160 to full council for second reading on August 13th. Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Miller made the second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll? Roll call vote.
Calling the roll, Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brady? Yes. Mr. Germana?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes, with the understanding that we have time to still negotiate this.
My understanding as well.
Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell? Yes. Mr. Jones? Yes. Mr. Rogers? Yes. Ms. Simon? Yes. Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
And Ms. Conley? Yes. Motion carries.
Very good, thank you. So this item will be moved forward to the August 13th meeting for second reading. Is there any miscellaneous business before the committee?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to reiterate what Mr. Gallagher said, that I really feel that there should be some serious negotiations regarding this so that hopefully we can save further conflict. Divorce lawyers always say there's three sides to every story: his side, her side, and the truth. So maybe in this case, we have a three-sided issue here, but we really need to get down to the brass tacks and straighten this out so that we can avoid further litigation and problems. I hope the parties will work to that end.
And Mr. Chair, I don't know why divorce lawyers are being picked on today, but I think we say that every place. But I hope, too, that we would, if this body decided to go with the charter amendment, that we wouldn't have litigation. I mean, it's such a small piece of this. It's such a reasonable extension of the new government. I would hope that there wouldn't be litigation.
Very good. Just as a reminder, a refresher today, since we've been here, items 158, 159, 161, 162, 160, and 164 have been referred to council. Item 163 was not. Is there any public comment unrelated to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, William Tarter would like to address council.
Okay, Mr. Tarter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of County Council. I'm speaking as a voter, not necessarily a member of the Charter Review Commission. One of the issues that I heard today was about the number of issues that will be placed on the ballot, and I'd like to provide a perspective on that topic. Because this was the first iteration of the charter, there were many issues that had to be corrected. It is possible that future...
Excuse me, Mr. Tarter, is your microphone on?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
He's a low talker.
Sorry. I will adjust. Okay. So repeating, because this was the first iteration of the charter, there were many issues that had to be corrected. It's possible that future charter review commissions will not have as many recommendations to the charter because the initial charter review commission has addressed a multitude of different issues. But all the recommendations that have been made are with the best interest of the voters in mind, with the expectation that if those recommendations were made to the council and the language approved or resolutions made with small language changes, then the people would ultimately be the decision makers of what changes are in their charter. For a deliberative body to not put things to the vote because they feel that the people will vote no by default causes me a high amount of concern. If you postpone good government changes until next year, as a voter, it could appear as if you're making the choice for them on what good government changes would take place. So, inefficiencies and organizational conflicts could potentially persist for another year. I believe that if there are amendments that are passed by a supermajority of this council that are in the best interest of the county, then the voters should have the ultimate decision-making authority at the next general election. Additionally, I fear that the message being sent to future commissions is that there may be recommendations that they make that are good for the government and good for the voters, but are ultimately decided not to be placed in a commission report because they fear that the council would not place it on the ballot because they fear it'll be too long. And this is not conducive to good government. All of the proposed amendments would receive coverage in the media, both print, visual, and social. Additionally, organizations like the League of Women Voters and others will conduct voter education seminars and share with voters what the impact will have on them. So I would strongly urge you to vote on issues based solely on their merit and not whether or not you think people will pay enough attention to vote for the duration of their ballot. So that is my statement, and I appreciate the time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Tarter and Ms. Mayor and Mayor Akers, thank you for being here all day today. And I know, Mr. Tarter, you've attended almost every meeting we've had on this subject, and Mayor Akers, you have as many as I didn't pull you away from your family, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr.
All right, Mr. Brady.
Miscellaneous
Yes.
comment, not a response,
Okay.
but miscellaneous. It shouldn't be believed by anyone without challenge that the council has a responsibility to do several things. I think that those of us who have been involved in government and in politics and in ballot issues for many, many years know for a fact that the length of the ballot does make a difference. It's not a concern of whether somebody votes for or against something, and if a supermajority of this council puts something on the ballot, it will obviously be on the ballot. The fact is that we have several levies on the ballot this fall. We also have local issues on the ballot this fall. The ballot should only be so long, and that is born out of the experience of 40 years of dealing with these issues. It does not reflect on the work of the commission, and it is just a flat-out fact.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you for that. Hearing no other comment, lunch is in the conference room. We are adjourned. Thank you.